Sounded a bit like Big Brother was watching there for a moment. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City of Untitled Council meeting for Tuesday, the 15th of October. We do have an apology from Councillor Heidi Greaves, who's not able to be with us this evening due to ill health, and sends her apologies. And let us begin with our pledge, and if I can ask all elected members to stand to recite this together. Thank you. We recognise the city's considerable natural and cultural heritage, including thousands of years of traditional ownership by Ghani, and the more recent contribution from people either born here or who have migrated here. And as we meet together, we build on this heritage by respecting and listening to each other, thinking clearly, being receptive to new ideas, speaking honestly and deciding wisely for the current and future well-being of those we serve. Thanks, everyone. And just a reminder, welcome to everybody here who's in the gallery this evening. This is a public meeting and you're very, very welcome. It is being recorded, so you may be captured by some of the recording materials, the tech that's in the room, so just be aware of that. I will remind you too that if there's any inappropriate behaviour, you'll be invited to leave the chamber, and I'll be calling on others to help me if that isn't taken at the first request. It's really good to be here this evening, and I'm very pleased that you're all able to join us. So first of all, I'd like to have a mover for our last minutes. Councillor Themilotis.
Yes, happy to move.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fisher.
Second amendment.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. There's no adjourned business. We do have a leave of absence. Councillor Themilotis.
Yes, happy to move.
Thank you so much. Councillor Fisher.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. And Councillor Yeomans, I'm sure, is grateful for your support. The next item is the Mayor's report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Themilotis.
Yes, happy to move.
And Councillor Bell.
Thanks, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm getting off very scot-free tonight. Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Now we've come to a very lovely part of the meeting, something I'm always proud of being able to support, and that is some presentations. So I think our first one this evening, Brett Williams, is going to tell us, is that true? Is it Brett? Is he in the chamber? Or perhaps he's just here. He is. I knew I'd seen him earlier. You're very welcome. And this is something we should all be incredibly proud of. The innovation in this project, which I hope we get to hear a little bit about, is for those of us who are a bit nerdy about road safety, and I'm one of those, we've got some incredible rural junction warning systems that some of you may have already been through or seen. And if you'd like to tell us a little bit about what you won, that would be great.
Oh, thank you. So this is about the Australasian College of Road Safety's Excellence in Road Safety Award, which was created to recognise a successful road safety project delivered within Australia or New Zealand. The award considers nominations that demonstrate a road safety project that has used safe system around thinking to deliver a practical and cost-effective approach to resolve or address a road safety issue. The awards were announced recently at the Australasian Road Safety Conference, Aldinga held in Hobart on Wednesday, the 2nd of October, and was presented by Assistant Federal Minister Senator Anthony Chisholm and the award sponsor, Component. The successful award recipient was the George Institute for Global Health on their project User-Driven Solutions to Reduce Incorrect Use of Child Restraint Systems. However, the award also recognised projects nominated by the City of Untitled, along with the Mornington Peninsula Shire Council, as highly commended winners among a field of at least 14 shortlisted finalists. So our nomination was titled Low Cost and Transferable Rural Junction Active Warning System, whatever it was like. It's engineers like making things sound not very interesting. Interim safety upgrade at the intersection of Chalk Hill Road, Oliver's Road and Field Street in McLaren Vale. This action arose through a need to address an ongoing safety issue involving this high-speed rural crossroads junction with a significant history of crashes. Most effective solutions, such as roundabouts or a staggered arrangement, are generally out of reach for local governments to prioritise and fund. So the low-cost technology was initially developed in collaboration with DIP, the University of Adelaide Centre for Automotive Safety Research, and Sage Automation, who have representatives in the gallery today. And this application was the first of its kind in Australia at a four-way crossroads intersection. An intelligent warning system that detects when vehicles are approaching the intersection and then activates flashing warning lights, highlight installed to signs to improve the awareness for drivers. And that system is about 4 times cheaper than the standard system used by DIP, which is based on changing the regulatory speed. Our system doesn't change the speed limit. It's not enforceable. Therefore, it can be a lot less reliable. It's still very highly reliable, but it doesn't have to have that really high level of integrity, and that brings the cost right down. The project, most importantly, was funded through phase 3 of the Australian Government's Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, which was delivered separate and prior to our 21 intersections mass action road safety program in the Parallel. Installation per year dropped to 0.86 when it had previously been 2.57 over the preceding 5-year period. That's about a 66% drop in crashes and associated road trauma. The Aldinga light system was decommissioned in September this year when construction of a roundabout at this intersection commenced as part of the 21 intersections project. We are now using an improved version of this system at 5 other intersections throughout McInerney, with road safety practitioners from other jurisdictions really interested in what we're doing with this low-cost treatment. Our state and federal governments are committed to Vision Zero, which is for zero deaths and serious injuries by 2050. To meet Vision Zero targets, low-cost infrastructure solutions are vital to be able to deliver as many point-to-buck treatments as possible rather than building gold-plated expensive solutions at fewer sites. This highly committed board demonstrates the leadership in road safety shown by the City of Aldinga, along with our delivery partners, DIP, the Centre for Automotive Safety Research and Sage Automation. Thanks.
That's okay.
Zero road deaths and trauma is something we should all be aspiring to, and the technology and the collaboration in that project is absolutely world class. We should be very proud of your work, and we're really proud to know you all and for the contribution you're bringing to not just to today, but all the future generations that don't have to have that road trauma. Our second presentation tonight is also about world-class work we're doing, this time in coastal adaptation for climate and climate resilience. And I'd like to invite Nina Keith to come up and talk to us about that.
Hello, thank you. So I'm very pleased to share that we were awarded I should read exactly what it was. We were highly commended by the Resilient Australia Award, and that was in recognition for the work that we did since 2017, developing our coastal adaptation plan. So it was a really long-term project, working with teams right across the council, and I'd like to make a special acknowledge Sal Dorado in the infrastructure and assets team. So we worked hand in hand on this project. He's not here tonight. But yes, teams right across council, really trying to understand how does our coastline currently operate so that we know when it's operating outside of normal parameters. And we now have a really, really clear baseline of where our coast is operating normally and when it's not. And the plan has already been really helpful in helping us to secure federal funding for coastal adaptation works. So it's already delivering. So yeah, thank you all.
And indeed, it's our coastal adaptation work is getting recognition all over the country, not just at our own little government house. So it's something we should all be proud of. And continue to help support as we go forward. So those of you who are following the agenda online, you're up to page 19, and this is the part of the meeting where we have deputations from the public. And our first deputation this evening is from Harry Xenikis, and if he'd like to come forward and come up to the podium, that would be great. And as he's making his way up, Harry's going to be talking about policy and procedure on public consultation, in particular about an issue that he's concerned about in his own neighbourhood. And you're very welcome, Harry. You've got 8 minutes. At the 6-minute mark, you'll hear a chime, and that will give you 2 more minutes just as an early warning. And I understand you're happy to take questions from councillors as well. Okay, off you go.
Yeah, I'll begin by thanking the residents from Noarlunga Downs that are supporting me today, and our council representatives as well. So I'll start by saying that I'm here today trying to protect the right of the residents. Sorry, I can't read my writing. Yeah, I'm here today to protect the previous. Yeah, so sorry, I'm just having
That's all right.
Reading my writing.
Okay. Take your time.
Yeah, so our parklands and our rights to enjoy them and to live in open spaces and choosing, and the houses we chose, you know, when we bought our properties, not to live in a high density arrangement where we would lose views which we enjoy through with me on every window of my house. And the privacy stepping out of my back door, which I will lose if they propose to build 4 or 12 allotments on the reserve next door, which 4 of them are proposed to be on my boundary, which are 4 double-storey townhouses. Now, at the moment, the reserve houses are part which was built around 5 years ago, which is which the council lined with 40 plus trees, which are native beech and gum trees, which our local residents have enjoyed walking and encourages them to exercise, which has greatly helped their physical and mental health. So the reserve plays where they take their pets every day. This reserve plays an important role where it protects also a 10-metre wide easement which runs the length of the reserve, which is a major pipeline which takes recycled water from the Presiding Beach recycle plant to the Wollonga water basin, which is proposed. Proposed to be ripped out to make way for the 13 high density allotments, where I've rang the sewerage plant and spoke to their manager, and he advised me this is not a good idea, but it would be very costly, and even then he was out if the pipe would be moved. And then he explained to me how the pipe runs in straight trajectory and you can't be putting too much bends in that, and he hasn't been approached by anyone from Renewal SA about this matter. And yeah, and so when, you know, council should be informed of concrete plans if the pipe was to be moved or not, because there's the 20 legislative that passed in 2021 where it holds council responsible if they sell an easement, land with an easement. So if it bursts in the future, you know, council will be responsible for the cleanup, and which the ratepayers would have to put the bill for. And yeah. Yeah, and also what I'm worried about is that someone from Land Services, which I thought of myself, said, they might not move the easement, but build the housing trust homes on your boundary, because, no private person will build on that easement where they could put the future housing trust homes along my boundary where where we had issues in the past where housing trust residents are placed in homes where they don't get proper support from these government agencies that place them there to deal with their complex issues, where I've been threatened in the past from neighbouring houses and neighbouring residents, which I don't want to put up with again. So also there is an act where we should have proper consultation where we got misleading letters that we were unaware of, who council told me were unaware of any allotments were going up. And basically I was told we don't know nothing of the council and go and talk to the developer. That was my public consultation. This isn't good enough. And council should be the ones consulting, not the developer. And also heard so people weren't fully informed. So how can patients be valid? And do they believe? And where a lot of residents were taken 120 petitions, are pretty shocked where they're going to be bringing in 1,300 new residents to the area. We're going to lose place that was supposed to be sports and recreation, and now they're coming after the last remaining bit of land to build an extra 12 allotments. And I'll get to the last page. Look, I was going to go by, won't be reading. So what I'm asking today is, in the past, revocated properties properties that can't fulfil their obligations, where this one does, this one fulfills, the social part of, the residents enjoying their walks. It's appropriate buffer for my house with the new development, and it protects the pipeline. So, I've been told, a council, have got financial losses. This isn't an excuse to sell park, where, the decision should be made on if this is in the best interest of the residents to save a park, which serves multiple purposes. And so that's right.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We appreciate that. Are you happy to stay and just take some questions?
Yeah.
So I'll just open it up to any councillors who might have a question.
Yeah.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Harry, for your presentation. What worries you the most if the council was to revocate land? What's the thing that worries you the most about that?
The most is, look, I enjoy my walks, I enjoy the nature of it, but the most concerning is building, 4 double-storey, or 2 of them are going to be double-storey townhouses on my boundary. So 4 allotments, 4 new neighbours, where I've bought the house thinking it's not going to be built, and it's a protected easement through it. It's a reasonable assumption to be made, and where the proposed sports fields and rec facilities, where now Party College are building, will pose $7 million recreation facility. So they've taken that taken, we were supposed to get sports fields. In my oldest dreams, I didn't think they were going to come all the way to my fence line. And, which is going to devalue my property. If I was to sell my house now, on the development plan, on my contract to sell, I've got to divulge this information. And, why wasn't I told even before this consultation process began, which locked me in that contract? Why wasn't I told that the zoning had changed in the past as well, which I've got lawyers looking into that at the moment and everything about this matter. And so why, and the SA planning porthole I was reading the other night was saying, even any zoning, they should be consulting anyone with vested interest, which would be me, my neighbour, and which we weren't consulted. So give the heads up back then if we want to oppose it or if we want to sell up. But now I'm trapped into it, and which I'm not a lawyer, but I can't see how this can be lawful. So, and so that's my concerns, and it's just you're building 650 homes out there, 1,300 residents. You think about ad space, and you're taking vital resources, which from the Department of Sports Rec and Racing. That's why they had this land for years. So not only are we getting that, and then they want to come and take an extra 12 allotments. An extra that narrow bit of reserve that we got, which for an extra 12 allotments, this doesn't make sense to me. Where there's other more suitable land in the area, they could do that, not this bit of land. So
thank you. Councillor Punt, did you have another question?
One more question for you, Harry. If the council was to retain the land, what would you like to see happen to it?
Beautification of it, take care of the trees, put extra trees, it would be appreciated by the new residents that are moving in. And just kept as a nature trail, green belt, the pipe stays, the infrastructure, there's nothing wrong with this infrastructure. Why dig up perfectly good infrastructure so you can put an extra 12 allotments anywhere in that area where other land more suitable. So, and people aren't going to be able to walk to the shops, aren't going to be, God knows how much construction, at the moment, construction's at such a slow pace, so, worry about the development that you're doing, not trying to take parts, add extra more, so it's.
Quiet, thank you in the gallery. Any further questions? Thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite our second deputation for this evening, which is Peter Gatsios and Kylee Gligic from Renewal SA, and I would just remind the gallery that no outbursts will be tolerated and you will be asked to leave if that continues. And I'll also ask security to shut that gate as well, please. Thank you very much. We are now, you've got 8 minutes. As I've advised you earlier, you'll hear a 2-minute warning at the 6-minute mark, and I understand you're happy to take questions as well. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much for allowing us to talk tonight. Peter Gatsios, Executive Director, Residential Projects and Assets at Yoursay, and Kylee Gligic, Senior Development Manager, and the Noarlunga project is under her regime. So just cool. Brief agenda, but I won't go through it considering the time. We'll play a bit of a tag team to go through the presentation. You would have seen earlier in the year the state government announced its roadmap in terms of housing and delivering housing to South Australia. In particular, it focused on 3 major projects in the south, being Noarlunga, Aldinga and Onkaparinga Heights, Hackham, with this one being one of the projects that Yoursay will be direct delivering. The main reason it's direct delivering is the fact that it was 3 different government organisations that own the land and had to be all amalgamated together to look at delivering as soon as possible so we can get outcomes. As you can see on the slide, it's 22 hectares of land. In terms of the outcomes, it's somewhere around 620 dwellings overall, of which 80 will be social housing that South Australian Housing Trust will deliver. Of the 600, there'll be about 20% that'll be under the affordable homes cap, so that we can get younger people and people on lower incomes into the area and stay close to high amenity areas as the Noarlunga and Noarlunga Town Centre. Minimum of 12.5% public open space. Trying to achieve a Green Star community rating of 5 stars, looking at 25% tree canopy target at tree maturity. And this site has got a lot of historical significance with the Aboriginal heritage. We know that there's been some discoveries in the past with the railway line extension, and we also have a known site in the southern corner of the land. Key partners on this project is South Australian Housing Trust, Renewal, and the City of McInerney.
So just running through our community engagement process. So this is distinct from Council's reserve revocation process. So Renewal SA on all of its major developments runs a very extensive community engagement. So we undertook this in July and August with 2 face-to-face drop-in sessions, and also, So we had 2 face-to-face sessions that we held at Port Noarlunga at the Cultural Centre, and then we also have had an online engagement tool called Social Pinpoint. So we promoted this engagement about our master plan development. Around 3,000 residents in the area were letterbox dropped. We've also promoted it through social media, our own website and Council's website to encourage attendance. And along our face-to-face sessions, we had 86 people come along, and then also followed up with around 47 that had interacted on our social pinpoint tool. The things that we really covered was the draft master plan that we were proposing. We're inviting feedback on that master plan. We looked at traffic movement, pedestrian movement, on-street parking, the residential outcomes that we're proposing for the development, and also open space. And as Peter mentioned, the 12.5% as a minimum, but we are sitting a little above that number at the moment. Alongside of that as well, the Southern Reserve, we're engaging with First Nations on the development itself, the cultural heritage matters, and also looking to have an Aboriginal themed reserve on that Southern Reserve.
In terms of what's going to be, thank you. In terms of what's going to be delivered, it's a mixture of different house topologies. The site is undulating in certain areas and it's flatter in other areas. So there'll be a mixture of townhouses. The potential could be some apartments, and then there'll be single-storey and 2-storey homes throughout the project. As I touched on before, there'll be at least, will be 80 social housing outcomes, and we'll be implementing our urban design guidelines, which means that every house will have to pass a review. So prior to getting to council, it will be an internal approval in terms of the design of each house. And we expect that we'll be commencing construction of homes in 2025, civil works in 2025, and then moving on to homes. And the project's expected to be a 6 to 8 year project.
Just in terms of movement, this was one of the presentations that we gave at our engagement session. So it was very important for our development to have very strong connections within it, from a pedestrian point of view in particular, and making those connections really quite attractive places to encourage people to walk. We've got an extensive landscaping plan proposed for the development, and we'll be working through that very closely with council, who will eventually take on that asset from us when the development is finished. There's also a number of key traffic connections to the development. So we're obviously making sure that people have, to the extent that we own the land, very strong connections to the existing amenity of the area. We're proposing 3 entrances on the western parcel. Goldsmith has 1 entrance and also 2 on on Dyson. And then also on the eastern parcel, existing roundabout from Honeypot and Liguria, for the entrance into that side of the development.
The proposal, as Kylie said, minimum 12.5%. We are slightly higher than that at the moment. Sorry about that. We want to achieve significantly higher tree canopy than most developments, and a lot of green space, linear linkages. There's, as I mentioned earlier, there's changed topography on the site, which lends itself to some key linear open spaces that can accommodate stormwater, treat stormwater. We're looking at reflection pond in the south, which is the significant Aboriginal reflection area, and a lot of internal informal walking trails as well as formal walking trails connecting through the development and then north, south, east, west. And talking with council so we can get recycled water to the site as it runs nearby, so we can have irrigated open space as well.
So just on the final slide, I thought it's a picture that tells 1,000 words in terms of exactly what the existing land that council owns comprises. So it's within that blue line. So as you can see, we have incorporated that land currently into our master plan. Should the revocation not occur, we will amend our master plan and exclude that area. So we have the flexibility to deliver on either option. However, I guess one important item to note is majority of this land is going to be created as reserve and open space. It'll be a beautifully landscaped area for the residents to enjoy, existing residents and also new residents. You can see there is a small portion of the land that does have townhouses on there. However, as I said, if the reserve wasn't revoked, we would run, I guess, a rear of allotments along that line. But what did strike us when we had our original master plan in the configuration was it could potentially create a fairly unsafe space, a walkway through that with boundary to boundary residents on either side. We felt that by incorporating this land into the development, it provided a strong amenity for the residents and also a safe amenity as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Questions? Councillor Wilkes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate you coming out this evening and for the other presentation we've had as well. I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask what the percentage of the plan is open space.
So it's a minimum of 12.5%. I think at the moment the master plan is still being slightly amended, but we're sitting at a little sort of 15 to 16.
Okay, and is that encompassing both sites, the western and the eastern site?
Yes.
So do you know the split between both sites?
No, I think it might be relatively similar between the sites, but we can provide that.
Sure, that'd be fabulous. Okay, so what is the plan for the services that are running through the council-owned land at the moment?
So those services, the
services that are highlighted on the title, like the easements.
The proposal would be to relocate them into the road immediately to the north.
Okay.
And then come back into the reserve. So just putting junction boxes or angles on the pipe and relaying it outside, and then removing the old pipe and reinstating it with level 1 compaction so that a house can be built up in the future. Okay.
So whose cost will that, who will incur that cost?
The developer. Us.
The developer?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so there'll be no services whatsoever running under the houses.
Quiet in the gallery, please. Quiet in the gallery. Councillor Wilkes, would you mind speaking into your microphone more closely, please?
Sure.
People here. Can you hear me now? Does that help?
Is that better?
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll talk louder. I probably don't.
Into the microphone, councillor.
All right. Okay, sure. So I just asked, what's the plan for the services on the site? You said that I just want to confirm there'll be no services under houses. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so you said that you undertook your own community consultation, and I was just wondering if you could summarise the feedback that you received.
Generally, we did receive a lot of support for the development in principle. The key concerns were mainly around traffic, impacts on traffic. However, we have engaged a traffic engineer and we're working very closely with council in relation to that matter and ensuring that we don't cause any additional congestion on those existing roads. That is a requirement of what we need to produce. Other residents that are here today as well came along to our consultation and spoke about the impact on I guess their interface with the development as well.
Okay, so this is coming back to our chamber at another time. So this will be coming back to our chamber another time. If we wanted to access the community consultation report from Renewal Yoursay, or the one that you undertook, where would we find that?
We will be publishing it. So it's just being compiled at the moment into a report, and we publish that online on our website. And we also will disseminate that to all of the people that attended as well. So that's our standard practice. We're also following that up with as a result of that feedback, some minor amendments that we're making to our master plan. We'll explain our rationale for the feedback that we've incorporated while we've made those changes. And we'll give people another opportunity to comment specifically on the reserve amenity, the types of structures and facilities that they would like to see in the reserve. We'll work with council just to ensure that, it is an asset that they're prepared to maintain as well, obviously, going forward.
That open space. Okay, so there's been a few different variations of how many homes potentially that you've suggested would go along that fence line. What guarantee can you give us that that would be the footprint of residents and it's not going to go across the whole residence, or like how certain are these plans that we're seeing?
Well, we're basically preparing to lodge our land division applications. So, as I mentioned, council ultimately approve all of the civil designs and obviously have opportunity for referral comments on all the land divisions. So we are working very closely with council on this.
Okay, so is there any flexibility for the design and the locations of the houses at this point, or do you feel like you've considered all of the engagement feedback?
We've probably considered all the engagement feedback and made some minor adjustments, still providing accessible links from the existing homes residents into the new development, and then minimising how many homes are abutting immediately next to homes. But you'll be seeing on that plan, there's still some green links between the existing and the proposed, and we haven't just built out the whole length of that fence line with homes.
Okay. The stormwater, the ponds at the bottom of the plan, have you modelled how often you think that they'll hold water, or have you done any modelling?
The master plan that we've shared with council. So that is, I guess, goes hand in hand with our engineering design.
Okay. I may have a few more questions, but I'll just let somebody else ask something out. Councillor Eaton. Councillor Wilkes, would you turn off your microphone, please? Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. With if the revocation didn't go ahead, what's the impact on the number of properties that could be developed there? What would be the reduction?
Usually, minimal impact. Minimal impact. It would be, probably 10 properties. It was more to do with the safety and the amenity of the area, the decision to incorporate the land.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Platten.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation.
And can you also speak into the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
You spoke briefly about social housing. Do you have an idea of where that might be? Is it going to be broken up? Can you speak to that?
It is broken up. So they're in small clusters of sort of 8 to 10 dwellings per cluster, and they will be scattered through the development. So Housing Trust is a partner in this project, so we are working very closely with them to ensure that we give allotments to them that suit what their requirements are.
Okay. And in terms of the proposed allotments that are along the fence line that I guess we're sort of considering tonight, the revocation. One of the concerns of residents is two-story or higher houses and having their privacy intruded upon. Is that a consideration that you've had?
Yes, it is a consideration, obviously, and there's a couple of options there. One is reviewing what a two-storey footprint would look like and what their setbacks are, your ground floor and then your second floor, and then obviously overlooking, making sure you address that. Or it might be that the blocks are large enough to still get a single-storey home that achieves a 2 to 3 bedroom outcome. So we'll be looking at different options for that.
And Councillor Judy.
Thank you for your presentation and also the residents too. I noticed from the council report that the Housing Trust actually owned the land and vested it to council in 1989. And I wondered, in the period from 1989 to now, what was the intention from a state government perspective of that land, the revocation land, well, that's council, but also this land that the community have felt that it's for sporting codes, and if there was any intention from a Renewal SA perspective for that land to be used.
Sorry, I guess we're representing Renewal SA. This land is land that we acquired, but in terms of the history of decisions, I'm not aware.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, that's fine. I wondered if there are many spaces across Metropolitan and Adelaide, particularly in the south, because we are aware there's a housing issue down here too, that are at this size and scale to enable this to take place. Are there many patches of land left?
The recent roadmap announcement, and then also the government looking at code amendments in the area, really shows that there isn't that much land to the south. You're obviously aware of Xenikis. On Capringa Heights, there isn't that much government-owned land or government-controlled land, and it'd be really what the private land ownership is.
Sure, thank you. And then my last question is around the amenity that you've highlighted for that reserve and open space. And if you can give us, because I'm quite visual, a description of what you imagine could be possible within that space. What will it look like and feel like?
That probably did form part of our community engagement, so we'd encourage you to perhaps look at our website. Sure. There was some images within our presentation that really do illustrate that. So it's something that's not set in stone, but we really want to engage with the community to see exactly what can be achieved. But we do have the 25% tree canopy target. We've made an additional allowance in our budget for more extensive landscaping to occur. I guess, part of our stage 2 engagement process, we'll get into more of that detail, and also obviously working with council officers as well.
Councillor Wilkes. Excellent, thank you. Thank you again for answering my questions. So you had on one of the slides, the movement slide, about the movement from your actual development, not the revocated land we're talking about. Well, not the revocated, but the land up for discussion tonight, but from the Renewal SA land into the Colonnade Shopping Centre. And I know that's now privately owned between Cardine, and I was just wondering, is there going to be a link between that land and sort of half mentioned? Can you elaborate on that a little bit further, please?
Look, it's something that we would encourage. Not being the landowner, we don't get the final say, but we have been in discussions with the adjacent landowners and with council about what those opportunities might look like.
Okay, and then I'm speaking to the microphone. So I'm so sorry, it's really short, and I don't want to bend over. Okay, so you've mentioned a couple of times when my co-councillor, Deputy Mayor Platten, asked about being concerned with these townhouses or two-storey. Oh, okay, sorry, it's really hard. So how are residents able to get in contact with you if they have concerns about this development?
That was pretty much the process that we've recently undertaken. So we encourage feedback on residential built form, movement, traffic, the master plan in general, and open space. So as I said, we're collating this feedback at the moment. We're making adjustments to the master plan, and then the next step will be to, I guess, share the final version with the community.
And then is there another stage of consultation?
Not in relation to the master plan, but in relation to specifically the design of those reserves and open spaces, and the amenity will be provided.
Okay, so if there's concerns about townhouses and overlooking on the boundary of this possible revocated land, that's already been considered?
Yeah, look, and the planning code also deals with that as well in terms of setback requirements, height and overlooking. So, you know, that they are protected from that perspective as well.
Can I just add that every block of land that we'll release will be under a building envelope plan. And that building envelope plan will show where you can build a house on the block, front distance from the front boundaries, side boundaries and rear boundaries, not only ground floor, but also first floor. So we'll be addressing a lot of those comments that came to us during the community consultation with the planning code, but also with our building envelope plan.
Okay, I look forward to seeing this community consultation collated. Thank you.
And just to alert to members, there is quite a bit already in tonight's presentation that you can go back to. Councillor Platten.
Just to follow up on my co-councillor, Councillor Wilkes' question, do you have an idea about the date that the results of that data will be released?
Oh, it's fairly close. I would say it's probably by next month.
Okay.
We should be able to have that live document.
Okay, excellent. And just a point of interest for this council is tree type. Do you have an idea about, you've got a 25% tree canopy at full life of the tree. Do you have an idea about what sort of varieties of trees you're going to be planting?
Well, we actually are meeting with council next week to talk through that. We've got some ideas. We've engaged a landscape architect to present to council next week. And also we've engaged an Indigenous landscape architect as well to get input in relation to that. We're also targeting a 5-star Green Star Communities rating as well. So we'll take into consideration the requirements of that rating tool.
We all love our trees here. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate you coming this evening and taking all those questions.
Thank you.
And just before we move on to the next deputation, I'm not sure if people did take the opportunity to go to the community open days that were offered up at the Noarlunga Community Arts Centre. I was there. There was a very long line waiting to get in, which was, and lots of people, I can verify that the 4 people in front of me all wanted to talk about traffic. 7.3 is our deputation, and tonight we've got Heather McInerney who's joining us from the Southern Montessori School, and this is regarding a revocation of community land at Roopena Street in O'Sullivan Beach. And if you'd like to come up, Heather, 8 minutes you've got, and you will hear the chime, as you've heard with our previous deputations, at the 6-minute mark, and that will give you 2 more minutes to go. And also want to acknowledge your Governing Council Chair, who's also here with you this evening. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Heather McInerney and I'm the Principal of Southern Montessori School. Thank you for providing the opportunity for me to speak this evening as a representative of our school and our community in respect to the proposal to commence the revocation of community land classification for Roopena Street. I would like to introduce Matthew Fossey, President of our Board of Governors, who's here tonight, due to the significance of this facility to the future strategic direction of our school. In August 2022, we commenced leasing the Roopena building for our baby steps and toddler parent-child programs. At the time, we were starting a building project and had no place for these programs in the primary school. Since that time, our families have come to love Roopena. While we agree that it is an old building, it is a perfect space for our smallest children to learn and grow. There is so much potential at Roopena, including a beautiful outdoor area that opens up from the classroom. We have exciting plans for the future use of the facility, ideas which have been requested by members of our community, and some of which are included in our strategic direction document. Ideally, we were hopeful that we might be able to negotiate a long-term lease over the facility. This would allow us to apply for grants to improve Roopena whilst not having to outlay capital. However, we do understand why the Council's Land Assessment Group has raised concerns about our application stemming from the ongoing maintenance and potential upgrade costs associated with an ageing facility. Therefore, we are not arguing against Council approval of the revocation. However, while recommendations from CLAG is that the council consider disposing of the facility on the open market, we would like to argue that should the council approve revocation and disposal, the preferred disposal option would be through direct negotiation with Southern Montessori School to achieve both financial and non-financial outcomes, as stated on page 88 of the council papers. We believe this approach also aligns with one of the disposal methods outlined in the council's disposal of land and other assets policy. We understand that if this approach were to be selected, the school would be expected to pay a competitive sales price resulting from an independent valuation. At this point, it would probably be helpful for me to give you a little bit of background about Southern Montessori School. We are an independent secular school. This means that we have no system, such as a church, to support us financially. While there are definitely advantages to being an independent school, a significant challenge for us has always been financing growth and improvement opportunities. For example, our primary school is situated on a small parcel of land with limited room for growth. For many years, we searched for an affordable middle school site in response to parent demand, and we were finally able to open our middle school with the support and vision of the City of Onkaparinga. It is now a thriving and innovative school co-located with Kylee Aged Care. We are a small, medium-sized school, caring for and educating children from babies to year 9. We currently have 236 children enrolled in our school, 52 children in our preschool, and 31 in our babies and toddlers programs. Our school is growing as we experience increased demand. We believe that many families are searching for an education that addresses the complexities of the modern world and one that empowers learners to flourish, not just in school, but in life. Our wellbeing data and our academic results are excellent. And so I can argue that our school provides parents in the Onkaparinga area with a unique opportunity for choice in educational pathways for their children. A humanistic, futures-focused education. Our school is low fee and proudly inclusive. Our baby steps and toddler programs, currently occurring at Roopena, provide an introduction to Montessori education. The focus is not just on the care and nurturing of our youngest children, but on supporting families. Many of our parents have no immediate family living in the area, and so we provide opportunities for them to feel connected and to increase their understanding of how they can best support the changing needs of their child. Page 88 of your council report describes how Southern Montessori School has demonstrated a strong community-minded approach. Our vision is for our students to become future leaders and problem solvers, contributing to a more sustainable and peaceful world. One of our core values is connecting and contributing to our local community. There are a myriad of ways in which we do this, but the two I would like to share with you now include our Year 6 students volunteering at Wakefield House and our middle school winning both national and international recognition and awards for our intergenerational program with Kylee Aged Care. We truly strive to be good citizens in our community. So why is it important for us that the council consider disposing of Roopena by direct negotiation with Southern Montessori School rather than on the open market, should you choose to decide to follow the Land Assessment Group's advice and revoke the community land classification and dispose of Roopena? We do have a concern that if offered on the open market, while we want to pay a fair price, we may well not be able to compete with a large developer. Sadly, losing Roopena will put the future of our 0 to 3 programs in doubt and lead to a lot of anxiety and disappointment in our community. Most importantly for us, entering into direct negotiations would give the school and our families more certainty about the future and our ability to continue programs for families of children in the early years. While the council could argue that a better price might be achieved on the open market, as I said previously, we are willing to pay a competitive price, and the council would be spared the costs of marketing the property with possible negotiation of revocation and disposal costs. If we were to be able to purchase Roopena, we would invest in the facility and to continue to offer a unique, high-quality early childhood service within the local area, as well as being able to expand our programs to meet families' needs
including the possibility of daycare for 2-year-olds. With 114 new homes to be built at O'Sullivan Beach, there will only be increasing demand for early years care and education in the future. I appreciate you allowing me to speak this evening and thank you for your time. I encourage you to visit our school if you feel that this would help in your decision-making process. And I'm also very willing to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Wilkes. Thank you so much for your presentation. School's actually in my ward, and being an active member, I've been to the school, I drive past the school, I've seen the school, and fortunate enough to meet lovely children that come from your school. So it's a pleasure to see you here, and thank you for coming in. Look, I just had a couple of questions around about the site itself, and if you've thought about your plans, because obviously from our last meeting, we talk a lot about open space and trying to keep open space in the environment. And yeah, so if the school was to be successful and we were to take it off open market as you've requested, and you were the one and only bidder, what's your plans for that site?
Well, initially, we will continue to use it and expand our babies and toddlers program. So we'll probably introduce another session. Some of the things that we've been looking at that our parents are really keen for us to follow, or as I was talking about before, childcare for 2-year-olds. So we currently provide childcare in our preschool for our 3 to 5-year-olds, but we just don't have room for younger children. There's a demand for that from our families. It is also like to have a look at supporting parents in the stages of pregnancy before the child's actually born, because as I said, a lot of families in the area don't have a wider connection and really need additional support. Our family is also very keen for us to be able to offer our own out-of-school-hours care service, which could be a possibility at Roopena. Obviously, over time, we've said it's an aged building and it does need a lot of work, but it is a beautiful building at the moment with a really lovely garden, and our children are really flourishing there.
Councillor June.
Thank you for your presentation. I was just interested in giving us a picture really of your existing site. I'm aware that you're right next to O'Sullivan's Beach Children's Centre and also O'Sullivan's Beach Primary School, and is there capacity for expansion?
There's not for us, no. Our school is actually very tight on the site that it's in. We have done a lot of, it's a very old building, we've done a lot of renovation, and we do have it in our building master plan to build another, what we call cycle 3 class, which is years 4, 5 and 6, which we will hopefully be able to do towards the end of next year. We're just waiting to hear confirmation of a block grant. So that is in our building plans. Once we've done that, there really is literally no room left. The only one belongs to the education department, so we don't have any spare land there.
Thank you. This is the first time I've done this. We have a new community vision, which is around for us community, environment, livability and leadership. And I just wondered if you could talk about your philosophy regarding the environment, community, livability and leadership, and how it aligns, and how, that's my first question.
Yeah, well, Montessori philosophy is very grounded in our responsibility to take care of our natural world. So that's a significant part of what we're teaching the children. But alongside that, there's also the benefits, of course, of being in the natural environment for well-being and mental health. So it really comes from those two different areas. Our children spend a lot of time cleaning up the local creeks, both the primary school and the middle school. We get involved in as many local projects as we can do. We really want them to understand and be out in nature so that they can make those connections and see themselves as stewards of our world. And as I said, our vision is about building a more peaceful and sustainable world. So we try to, from a very early age, our children learn those dispositions. They're going to help them to be able to make a positive contribution to their world.
Thank you. And Just to clarify, the land that we were talking about tonight is the car park of the Roopena building as well as the Roopena building. It's not the green space.
No, it's not. No.
So, yeah.
And actually the car park has will need to have not an easement, sorry, a space for council vehicles to drive down. So we wouldn't be able to build on that bit of car park anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's really just the house, the land and a little bit at the back.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilkes.
I was going to clarify something, but I think Lauren has done it for me.
Thank you. I love visiting your school and I love the frogs as well, that I'm hearing about what the young ones have been up to. They are great stewards and a great credit to our community, and they've cleaned up that back area better than anyone could expect with the creek. So thank you very much for all that you do. And thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
We're now moving into items, reports of committees, 8.1, 2 and 3, starting on page 23. Is there any update that we need to pay attention to? Through you, Mayor, there was a series of questions provided by Councillor Bell. Those have been answered and copies of those responses are in your folders. Thank you very much. Councillor Pritchard.
Happy to move the recommendations as written.
Do you wish to speak to?
Yeah, I'll speak briefly.
Go ahead.
Because that's what we always say. We're going to speak briefly.
Well, 4 minutes.
There's a couple of ARC minute meeting minutes coming up. So specifically this one on the 12th of September talked around the procurement policy. Now there's relatively minor changes have been made to that one. So that one should be relatively straightforward. Interestingly, in this one was the annual report on our work health and safety performance over the last 12 months. The results of the sort of KPIs were excellent and acknowledged by the ARC, especially given that there was an increase in the employee hours over the 12 months, and yet there wasn't a corresponding increase in incidents, which is excellent. There was, however, a concerning trend around threatening behaviour. So there's been a year-on-year increase over the last 3 years on threatening behaviour. And if you do have a look at the minutes, the gender in particular, you'll notice that the Noarlunga Library stands out well and above. So the ARC discussed this matter with administration, and certainly there's some programs that have been introduced around how we can look at why that's occurring, particularly at the Noarlunga Library. I won't talk in this one around the BR4 comments because the next set of minutes then updates the sort of budget review comments, and I'll talk about that then. No.
Thank you. Councillor Bill. Can you turn off your microphone? Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll second that motion.
Do you wish to speak to?
Yes, I do briefly. I just want to acknowledge the work of the ARC and acknowledge the work and the participation of our two councillors, Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Yeomans. I also want to thank the governance team for answering my questions. I can recall going to the first meeting, and my particular concern, as you can see from my questions, was about moving away from recording. So I just wanted to clarify some points. So thanks again for doing that. I can remember attending that first meeting when the independents started in that role, and they certainly were surprised at the time that the meeting was being recorded. So it was interesting and good to highlight, I thought, in the answering of the questions, that what led to that. And obviously the recordings started sometime after or during COVID, in 2021, for example, and clearly some of the independents on the committee had some concerns about speaking freely at the meeting, obviously, and perceived risks at the time. One of the questions I asked, as you can see, is about legal advice and whether council had sought that, and obviously it wasn't necessary. Thank you for clarifying that. Obviously important also to highlight that essentially there's no requirement to the court record the meetings in accordance with the legislation. And of course, importantly, it is still a public meeting and the public can attend. So I do support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, speakers? Councillor Yeomans.
Just a quick one, if I could just talk quickly on that recommendation.
Go ahead.
2, which is in relation to the recording of the confidential items. That was a bit of an interesting one for me, because you might recall I actually put a motion forward in relation to, or some questions in relation to why we're doing that as a chamber, recording confidential items. So where the balance was with the Audit and Risk Committee, they didn't sort of take into account, which they shouldn't be, the political aspect of it. They were sort of looking at it purely from a risk perspective, and you can certainly see what the outcome there was. So I certainly understood and supported what they were, where they were angling there. I think if it comes to the chamber in that perspective, what the chamber needs to look at as well is what the community would expect as far as recording those particular items. But you could certainly see where the ARC were coming from in that regard. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Pritchard, just to close, I'll put the report, the recommendations. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. 8.2 is the Special Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Pritchard, are you moving?
Moving as written.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Or do you wish to speak to the motion briefly?
No, not briefly this time. I'm going to use the whole 4 minutes.
Whole 4 minutes. We'll just start the recording right now.
So the Special Audit and Risk Committee meeting is mostly around 2 things. It's the end of year results from a financial point of view, and it's also the opportunity for the external auditor to have a closed session with the committee, and also where they present their letter. So I guess the key takeaway in this set of minutes is that the external auditor was happy to provide an unmodified opinion, which I think from an accounting point of view is a really good thing. I think that means that they are very happy with the audit results and are happy to support them. So that was their recommendation. This is the end of 5 years that we've used Bentley's for the external audit, and that's I'm not sure if it's legislated, but we can't select them again. So there was certainly the ARC acknowledged the 5-year service that Bentley had provided in that period. The end of year results, which were mentioned in sort of budget review 4 in the earlier meeting and then updated with this meeting, and we've talked about it in the council chambers around the financial impact of the federal grants and the date that they were received. Some really interesting comments, and there was one from independent vendor Andrew Johnson around a metric that doesn't get a lot of highlighting, but that council's performance last year was effectively cash neutral. So from an operating accounting point of view, it was a deficit budget, but what he was really interested in was the performance from a cash point of view. And I think going forward with regards to our debt strategy and where that goes, he was really keen to acknowledge that performance was really good for the last 12 months. And I think there was one last item which around the annual report, and again the ARC was keen to add the comment from, especially from the independent members, that it was a job well done. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
I'd just like to second the motion. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Pritchard, do you wish to close? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. And I do think it's a terrific result when the committee itself wants to also make sure that administration are congratulated on a job well done under some pretty tough circumstances, and also in our CEO's first year. So I think we should be pleased that the committee is supporting in that way. 8.3 is the presiding members report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Yeomans.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this one, please.
And do you wish to speak to the motion?
I will talk briefly. I'll take the lead off Councillor Pritchard.
Do we need to start the timer?
If you like, I won't be too long. I'm just going to take a couple of words out of the presiding members report. Firstly, to acknowledge the fact that the presiding member has actually taken the time and effort to present a report. We've had this discussion amongst ourselves within the ARC, and we find that as part of the legislative requirement to provide advice to the chamber, it's also imperative that a report follows. And previously, there's been a bit of reliance on the minutes, the elected members on the ARC, presenting verbal reports. This just enhances that, and I think it's really important that I'm sure you've all read it, but it was some really good points were taken out of it, and I think this just further emphasises the fact that this particular ARC is really keen to ensure that they do inform and advise this chamber on particular issues. So just a couple of points I just want to highlight from the presiding member's report. He notes here that the ARC continues to be concerned about the practice of council approving carryover of unspent funds into the budgets for successive years, and continue significant carryovers effectively defer expenditure from one year to the next, making the final performance for the year look better than the reality. There's another point here that he makes where he says the practice of management is to apply unspent funds to the debt retirement, with the debt being drawn out again when the funds are needed. While this is a sound financial management, it can serve to make the financial position more opaque or not as transparent as it should be. And to that end, we noted that the financial report, the annual report that was presented at the last meeting did actually include the table, which you find on page 45 of the papers, where you can clearly see, I think not from the public's perspective, they can clearly see the financial position of the council, where you've got the reported borrowings being a certain amount, with the revenue received in advance. Then you're seeing the underlying total borrowing position, which I would consider to be the debt. I think that's a very good outcome from a transparency perspective. But aside from that, I think it was a very good first report from the presiding member, and I encourage you to keep a copy of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Pritchard.
Just seconding the motion.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak?
Just to reiterate Councillor Yeomans' comments that this just adds on the reliance on Councillor Yeomans and I providing good information in the meeting. So it's great that the chairperson has provided some support for us.
Thank you. Councillor Jew, a question?
I have a question. It's just in relation to the issue highlighted around excessive formalities of the ARC meetings. And I was interested to know what are the steps to potentially address this, and what's council's role within that?
Okay.
Is there a role for council?
I can see that the CEO wants to make a comment on that, when I will certainly encourage him to do that. You will see in the last paragraph some of the innovations, and including this being the part of that innovation, with the report coming from the chairperson, and we also have one in our confidential papers. But if you'd like to add anything to that.
Through you now, I think you've just hit the nail on the head of what I was going to mention. So in the report itself, you'll see that the ARC chair and some of the members have asked for some further advice on that. So I'll be working with the team on how we get some work done in that space.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to also support the motion and acknowledge again the ARC committee, the independent members, our elected members, Pritchard and Yeomans, and of course our CEO and staff that have worked very well together and helped to advise us throughout the process in the last 8 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yeomans, do you wish to close? I'll put the item. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried. And if I can indulge Councillor Yeomans and Councillor Pritchard, if you can pass on our thanks directly to the chairperson and the independent members for their excellent contribution. I know it's a fascinating committee to be a part of, but we really rely heavily on their independent advice. And thank you for doing the heavy lifting by being the conduit between us and them. The first item, we're now into the reports of officers. So for those following an electronic version, we're up to page 47. And Councillor Themiolotis.
Start with some questions, please.
You certainly can. Off you go.
My first question is, can I just confirm with council staff a commentary that Revenue SA made? The council Renewal SA, sorry.
We may want them to be Revenue SA, but unfortunately they do not have that.
You're thinking went the wrong way. Can I just clarify that in terms of the land that is council's, it is about 10 houses that strip that what Renewal SA mentioned is correct information?
So there's the two allotments are allotment 49 and allotment 289.
Am I on the wrong?
You're right, yeah. So the two allotments. Can somebody help with that? Answer that question?
Show you.
Yep. Thank you.
I just want to confirm with council staff. Correct.
Through you, Mayor, we're on the current master plan that we've got, the draft master plan, it indicates there'd be 12 allotments on that larger parcel, 289.
Yeah. And would it be fair to say that if council chose not to dispose of the land, they would still continue on with their wider master plan?
That's correct, councillor. They have confirmed that if we don't revoke and transfer, they will still go ahead with their master plan minus the 12 parcels.
Thank you. And my final question is there any pressure for elected members to make a decision on this tonight? Is there some sort of time frame with this? Like, what is the pressure?
Through you, Mayor, there's probably no time pressure other than we have undertaken public consultation and the legislation, expects that we will make a decision within a reasonable time after public consultation.
And there's a supplementary to add to that?
There is pressure from a planning perspective. They're looking to move ahead with the land division. And I think Renewal, as I said tonight, they're looking to lodge the land division very shortly to ensure that they have, they're looking to see this process move forward to that so they can make their plans in which land division format to put forward.
So that, can I just summarise? So the timeliness is because of a developer pressure rather than a council regulatory requirement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to try and attempt to move something. Yeah, I'll just attempt to move it.
Have you provided some words?
Have not. This has actually come about.
So I just want to remind councillors that we really do encourage that. So if you could read it out nice and slowly.
I will read it out. Well, actually, what if I say what it is and I'll seek some advice from council staff?
You could ask it as a question.
Okay, then I'll ask it.
Would that assist?
It will assist as a fourth question. If the agenda item was deferred tonight till elected members could see the engagement outcomes for Renewal SA, would that be an issue?
Would that be a regulatory issue from a council point of view, or just would that be an issue full stop?
Full stop in terms of the timing. Okay. So if this was deferred, because I remember the lady saying that the engagement outcomes will be ready.
Imminent.
And I really would like to see those engagement outcomes. So if I was to defer this till we could review those to next council meeting, is that going to be a problem?
I'll just give the staff a moment to
question only.
Consider how they'd like to respond to that question.
Yeah, through the Mayor, Councillor, I think there are a couple of things to consider. One is that the consultation that Renewal SA has done will be on their master plan. So obviously that's part of the overall development, but what you're considering is obviously a small component of that, right? So you'll see comments, but it will relate to the overall master plan. I think the crux of this is from a legislative point of view, could you defer and say, yep, you don't want to consider until you've seen that report? You could. What it'll mean, I suggest in a practical sense, is from the Renewal SA's point of view and their planning, we don't know specifically how that will impact on their planning. It's very clear in my conversations with Renewal SA that they're keen to get houses out of the ground to try and support the housing challenges that the community more broadly are facing. So that's the potential risks that we have, but I don't know what that looks like without having a more formal conversation with them around the timing.
Councillor Platten.
Thank you very much. I've got a few questions here. If you don't have the answers on hand, just get back to me after.
We'll take them on notice.
Take on notice is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
When will the final revocation report be likely to come back to council if this report was to be accepted tonight?
So how long? Through you, Mayor, the next stage, if council proceeds tonight, is to provide a package to the minister seeking consent. It'll determine how long the minister takes for us to receive a response. If the minister provides a timely response, we'll be back in the chamber to present a final report to council thereafter. I'm not sure if that will be this year or early next year, just depending on the minister's.
Just to clarify, that's the Minister for Local Government, not the Minister for Housing or Minister for Planning.
Okay, that's fantastic. A question around the zoning for this parcel of land. Has the zoning on this land changed, or for this housing to be enabled?
Through the Mayor, effectively no. However, the names of the zones have changed through the introduction of the Planning and Design Code in 2021. However, the last 30 odd years it's been zoned residential of different levels. At the moment it is the housing diversity zone, which is effectively a low to medium density zoning, and that has not changed.
Okay. We heard in the deputation tonight that the path has been there for around about 5 years. Can we speak to when the path was put in, why it was put in? That's on the land proposed to be revocated.
The fence. I think we might be
take that on notice. I just want to speak to recommendation 7, which is about the short-term licence agreement. My assumption is that this is for fencing or bunting that's used for development. Can you speak to that at all?
Through you, Mayor, that is purely for access, just a logistical access to their own property.
Okay, so
across ours. It's just that very small parcel, not the big parcel.
Okay.
Like the small parcel.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Wilkes, a question, or Councillor Platten, would you mind turning off your microphone, and Councillor Wilkes speaking to the microphone?
Sure. So I just wanted to get some clarification just after Deputy Mayor Platten has asked. So the zoning on the state and council land has always been for houses?
Certainly in the last 30 years, that's correct.
Okay. So it's written in the motion that open space will be vested back to council once the development is complete. And I just want to know, from a planning perspective, as your planner, what's the safest option, or what do you see as the safest option for residents? Is it to have like the back on back property with a laneway in the middle, or is it to have residents' houses backing up to another resident's house and having one interface?
Yes, through the Mayor, certainly the plan proposed by Renewal SA with houses backing onto housing and walkways directed along the street, so along the pavement street, we've got street lighting, we've got multiple properties overlooking that space, is a lot safer and a better planning outcome than backyard fences with a walkway through in quite a narrow area, I think down to 5 metres in some parts of Peterson.
Okay. There will be a section of land where we have the traffic movement, potentially if Housing SA, Renewal SA plan as is stipulated, goes ahead, there'll be a funnel of pedestrians off that particular road that you speak of, and it will go behind again between 2 fences. Do council have plan to, so maybe I'll get the map up. was just wondering, because we are leaving a section of land that has fence boundaries, and that will still be council managed land. Do we have a?
Is that in the far east?
So just before we answer that question, this is kind of getting into the realms now of theory and because it's at a level that is beyond what we're actually got in front of us, so we can't be determining how the master plan might get reshaped. So I would encourage you, council, to be very specific to the motion and questions that are related to what's in front of you.
Okay.
I will speak to the microphone, please.
All right. Okay. So now, does council have the ability to influence renewal SAs planned with a single story or a double story residence on the land that we are discussing for revocation?
Through the Mayor, the Renewal SA have already taken into consideration those the community consultation and the residents put forward certain views about single story, etc. Once it gets to a council planning stage, we have to apply the actual planning and design code policies, not necessarily what individual residents are looking for.
Do we have the ability to apply a design code to single story only rather than townhouses 2-story? Do we have that ability?
Effectively, that is at the whim of the developer, because once they've lodged the land division, if they don't determine they want it to only be single story, the policies of the planning design code apply.
Okay, so it's external to us, but we have custody, if you like, or jurisdiction over making sure that the compliance happens within the code itself. And so the code is external to us. Our responsibility is to make sure there's compliance within the code. And so to ask council staff if they were going to work outside the code, they would always be working inside the code because that's their job.
Okay.
Could I just add a little bit further detail to that? Renewal SA have indicated that they're going to introduce what are known as building envelope plans and have their own separate set of design guidelines that sit over and above the planning and design code. Now, that's not something we administer or assess. That's something that they approve before the application is lodged. So as part of their community consultation, they will be taking into account what the feedback was. And so that building envelope plan shows the setbacks, overlooking opportunities, management of the site, and that will be how it is lodged with council, after which we assess it under the planning and design code.
And is that
there's 2 opportunities there for that to be looked at.
Excellent. And does that happen before the next decision where it comes back to council?
So that's through the Mayor, that's through the development application process, which is a subsequent process and entirely separate.
Okay.
To the revocation process, which is under the Local Government Act.
Yeah, so we're moving away from, we're actually, councillor, we're moving away from the motion if you're talking about codes and amendments.
No, I'm trying to talk about that envelope.
Yeah, so I'm overruling that, saying that's out of order. We're talking about the revocation. We're not talking about the building code. Have you got a question relating to the revocation?
I'm trying to think of the intent.
So perhaps if you sit down and find a question, and I'll go to the next councillor. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion, please.
Go ahead. Would you wish to speak to the motion?
I'd like to say a few words. It might be in the form of a question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this motion is about the sale and reclassification of land. Am I correct? Predominantly.
Predominantly, it's about us making a decision. Do we want to list this as land for revocation?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So, and there will be at a later date further abilities for obviously the buyer, let's say the buyer, SA Renewal, to make further submissions and for community possibly to be involved and obviously have to go through a process through the development. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Councillor June. A question, or are you seconding the motion?
I'm happy to second the motion. I have a question.
Go ahead.
What approximately, what is the percentage of land that will be coming back to council if the revocation goes through, i.e. the open space? We saw
the reserve piece, yeah.
Are we talking about 60%? Would you suggest about?
No, we haven't done those calculations as yet, but effectively, while there's 12 allotments, that equates to effectively 6 because our easement's not a full allotment width in half of in those places. But the majority of the reserve will be returned to council as open space.
And just to add to that, the whole development is required to provide 12.5% open space across the whole development, and they've indicated tonight potentially 15 to 16%, but 12.5% of the sites will be coming to council as open space.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. I absolutely appreciate the existing residents' concerns. And as I've been listening tonight, there's a few things that I've been thinking about, particularly from the deputation. One was around the beautification of space, which Renewal SA talked about would be used, this land would be for the purpose of that, as well as some housing. The issue around the neighbours and visibility, the planning code we've heard helps to resolve that issue, and also the concern around transport and the trail, which we've also had confirmed and reinforced tonight that that's still a priority and will be considered throughout the design. So with that in mind, I feel like I am in support of the revocation process taking the next step. The report to be highlighted that the subdivision occurred. This was originally Housing SA land, and therefore the intention many years ago was for this to be housing land, which then was handed over to council, and now a purpose has been identified for this land to be utilised. I think about the long-term financial principles that we have already decided on, and this is a way in which we are enacting and embodying them as a chamber. We know through our own community vision and community planning process that housing was one of the #1 top priorities of our local region. And I understand from the neighbours' perspective that that's a challenge. But as we heard from Renewal SA tonight, we have limited land space. So if we want to help to resolve this issue for our southern residents and those that want to make the south their home, then we need to be able to come to the table. By the revocation process and us leading that and being willing to do that will help our staff have a seat at the table, which we've heard previously is imperative and really important in shaping the broader project. We also have a commitment currently for a housing strategy across the city, which we're working really hard on. And this is another example to model and demonstrate a way that we can play a role in addressing the housing crisis faced by our state. The report highlighted that this is about, for this land, it's about high quality urban design, landscape and integrated open space, as well as the additional houses, which meets the our vision for our community. And with that in mind, I am happy to proceed, and I seek your support as well as a chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thimilotis.
Yes, I will debate, Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Elected members, I just want you to consider this. When we're making a decision, we look at multiple things. So we've got a petition that we're looking at tonight. We look at deputations. We look at the presentation we had tonight. We look at our reports. We also want to make sure we have every element of information in front of us to make the best decisions. And why do we want to make the best decisions? Because it's land, we may not necessarily own the whole portion of land, but it's land in our council area. And we want to make sure we have the best developments in our council area. Now, I'm not against the revocation of land, but I am concerned that I don't have enough information in front of me. And the concerning bit of information for me is that engagement outcomes from Renewal SA. Why? Because the lady who presented today said that as part of the plan, we have made concessions. So we've made amendments to the plan that we're looking at in our report. Now, those amendments are supposed to address concerns raised by residents. Well, I haven't seen that. So I'm just going to trust developer and I'm just going to trust Renewal SA. Well, I actually don't. I want to see that. I want all information in front of me because some of the worst decisions are made when we are not fully informed. And I'd rather be fully informed and completely committed to this development, if that's the direction this chamber decides to go. I know what this means. You're saying, Councillor Familiotis, you're just kicking the can down the road and just prolonging it to another council meeting if that's your intent. And maybe it is, but if my intent means that I feel like Renewal SA have genuinely listened and I don't. Why? Because we had residents in this chamber. We had a deputation and Renewal SA didn't even acknowledge that. They didn't even say, we acknowledge the residents that have come out tonight. We acknowledge the issues that you have raised around privacy and the types of properties and view and access and green open space and environment. They didn't even, that was a prime opportunity to be face to face with resident and just acknowledge that and say that our concessions that we are making right now as part of the engagement will be addressed in that master plan. So we had some sort of confidence. The residents had some form of confidence. So I'm saying to elected members, yeah, maybe I'm kicking the can down the road, but I would rather make a fully informed decision, knowing exactly what I'm making a decision on before I make it. That's the only reason why I won't be supporting this at this time, but we'll accept whatever the chamber decides to do.
Thank you. Councillor Platten.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to speak briefly, if I can.
Your time starts now.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to highlight Harry for coming and doing a deputation. I've done a similar thing myself about 5 years ago, and it's not an easy thing to do. It led me to want to be an elected member. So who knows, mate? In 5 years' time, you might be here too. It's a scary thought, only because it's scary to do it. I wanted to take a leaf out of Councillor Dew's book and show everyone this amazing community vision that we've spent a lot of hours of our life doing to highlight the conflict of an elected member. So we have signed up to this. We believe in it and we want to increase our livability. So one of the points there, it's a great place to live. We want to increase diversity of housing to suit a broader range of people. This ticks that box. We want to expand opportunities for safe, accessible travel by paths, roads, rail and trails. We heard tonight from the Renewal SA deputation that they felt this would be a safer thing to do rather than having two fences blocking in a reserve. We want to integrate sustainable climate resilient approaches in our developing and making those safe places. This is giving us a 25% coverage in our forest. We want to inspire healthy choices. Now, I see a path that people use to walk to a shopping centre as a healthy choice. We want to increase our leadership, increase visibility of, amplify our community voices. It's something that Harry exemplified tonight, showing up. He's been here day on day, asking questions, and I think we need to acknowledge that. I guess what I'm trying to highlight is, from my perspective, I don't have to live here and I don't have to worry about what 4 neighbours on my boundary is going to mean to me. I have to worry about, from a whole of council approach, trying to get enough housing and trying to do that in a way that doesn't make a huge impact on someone's life. So we have this opportunity when Renewal SA says that they have a report coming back that should show that community voices have been listened to. That comes back in approximately a month. And I don't know if anyone in this chamber knows much about ministers, but they don't take a month to sign off on things. So if you were to vote yes for this proposed revocation tonight, it still comes back to the chamber in 3 to 6 months, could be 12 months. In solidarity with Harry and the residents who showed up tonight, and as their elected member, I'm erring on the side of not voting for this tonight. But I would hazard a guess that if Renewal SA didn't listen, and if this chamber did vote to revocate or move the process forward tonight, that we would have prime opportunity when it does come back to the chamber to shout about it.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for the conversation thus far. I guess I just wanted to speak, not necessarily, well, I'm going to support this motion. I believe that what we're ultimately going to get out of this is a better outcome for the residents. I don't think that we, given our budget situation, we'll be able to beautify that reserve to anywhere near the extent that is proposed in this. And I guess the item of around the safer performance of a community in a design, and it, you know, I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about it before, of having a path along a back fence versus having a neighbour on a back fence and a path in their front, on their front fence. But that to me sounds like a logical decision. Completely understand and acknowledge Harry as the deputation, and absolutely applaud him for coming out tonight. And yeah, I am just, I do believe, but I do take Councillor Platten's words into effect, that it is not my area that this is being impacted on. So I don't make these decisions with a light heart. But I do believe that this will create a better environment in that area, and especially with that beautification of what is currently council land, which I don't think that we can provide going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Bill, do you wish to close? I'm sorry, Councillor Wilkes, I didn't have your light on. Are you planning to, do you have a question? Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I was planning on moving a amendment to this because I.
So are you debating?
I'm debating.
Thank you. You're into your time.
So I was planning on moving an amendment for this because I felt like in point 3 we acknowledged the community consult for parcel 1, which is a tiny piece of land, and clearly state there was no feedback. And I felt for point 4 we didn't even state the community consult and how heavy it is that people do not want to see this land revocated. So that frustrated me. But then if I move an amendment here, it means I agree with it. So I chose not to move an amendment because I understand that there is a balance between acknowledging the residents who took their time to come out tonight. They've gone to the the Mayor Weir said, that they've had lines out the door at the council's community consult. They've written in droves, and then I think there's the desires of council and revocation land. So again, like Councillor Familiotis, I'm not against the revocation of land, but I really would have liked to press staff and Renewal SA harder about that envelope policy that they seem to have and our point of influence, because I don't see that there is a huge issue from council when we look at the community. Sorry, there's not a huge issue from the community when we look at the community consultation about the houses. So I'm really stuck here. Harry's come and he's told us his concerns of privacy. He's told us about how his windows look out and face this land. He's told us about how the reserve has just been planted coming years, or a few years ago, with trees, and there's a path going through. Council have assured me that, he's also said that it plays an important role for his mental health. We've talked about the pipeline going through there and how this land is an appropriate buffer for the new Renewal SA, or the always held Renewal SA site. Now, that brings me to that site, so not the land that we're looking at, but the site itself. If you go to this site, it is so clear that they are putting houses in that space. There's not cul-de-sacs at end of roads. There's literally roads that have finished with bollards on them. So it is abundantly clear that that is earmarked for housing. It always has been earmarked for housing, and it's going to be earmarked for housing. So the fact that houses are going in there, it's always been there. So that's something that I'm struggling with as well. So then now we have the land that councils own. Now, council have assured me that that was always earmarked for housing, and that had that zoning on it as well. So I'm really struggling. I would have loved to have pushed further, but I couldn't finalise my questions about this, how we can influence how council's land, if revocated, would be developed. Now,
I also see the benefit so we've had great community consult. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, residents. But I also see the benefit here for other residents in the area who will get this developed open space. So if we do revocate this land, then we know Renewal SA are going to come in and they're going to beautify the area. They're going to have that tree target of 25%. We're going to have, a lot better than what's there now, which is a dirt path and a couple of trees planted a year ago. So I am really interested to see the modelling that I asked Renewal SA for the wetlands. I'm really interested to see the community feedback that hasn't been released yet. And I still have a lot of questions regarding this about council's influence and if we can influence it, if we do revocate it. So I won't be voting for this tonight. I don't feel like I won't be. So I think the vague nature of the answers that I had regarding the community concerns were not answered for me. So yeah, it's a no from me. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. I want to be clear about this. I think it's been mentioned a couple of times tonight. We're not actually making the decision regarding the land. We're just here to make a decision revocation. And then once we hear back from the minister, then we make a decision. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep, through you, Mayor, that's correct. Yep. Councillor Yeomans.
Just one question, if I can, and just on the following from Councillor Fisher's point there, in listening to what the residents' concern is, and from what I was picking up, a lot of it is in relation to the housing that might abut their properties. Is the question is an opportunity for during this time, if we do vote to proceed so far, is an opportunity to engage with the Renewal SA from a council perspective, so that we can take those concerns and they can perhaps consider what housing they might put there, bearing in mind that we'll get the final decision on this down the track.
Yes.
Through the news, separately from the revocation process, we're meeting with Renewal SA on an almost fortnightly basis around the land division, proposed land division for open space for traffic for all of the components of
Everything to do with the master plan. Yeah. Councillor Bell, do you wish to close? Thank you just briefly, Mayor. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge all the comments that have been made by everybody. I think it's very important and useful, and acknowledge also the community that is still in the gallery, and obviously Harry, who provided the presentation. And everybody's already said it. Really, I mean, it's the issue is about revocation, and it will come back to us. We need to remember and remind ourselves of our commitment and our responsibilities to all of our community, and responsibilities and work that we've done towards meeting housing strategy commitments. I separately to some do believe and trust in the process, and there is an ability always obviously to improve processes, but I do believe there is a process, and we just need to trust in that one step at a time, and then allow the staff and community and Renewal SA and all of us to participate in that process at a later date if required. So I would encourage everybody to vote for this. I think it's a good first step, and that's what it is. It's a good first step in the process. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? 2, 3. All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 9.2, the proposal for the revocation of the community classification reserve 2 Roopena Street, O'Sullivan Beach. Councillor Wilkes. Are you question, or are you moving the motion? I would like to move the motion with an amendment, please. Yes. And I have provided my amendment. Thank you very much. But after the deputation, I would like to add just a little whereabouts. Point one. Point one. After the full stop, Alex. Delete the full stop. Or in direct negotiation with Southern Montessori. Isn't that already there? Good. I believe that's already included. Oh, sorry. Apologies. That's
Fine, keep going.
Okay, I just got the open market, so.
I'm just getting some advice because there's a few little technical details. Can you just hang on 1 minute?
Yes.
And I'll see if I've got some words that will meet your expectations as well. Okay, so the steps.
So can I have a look at the alternative?
Yes, so the alternative motion essentially is that we would go first to the school, and if that was unsuccessful, then to open market.
Oh, I want to add my yellow.
You want to see them side by side. That's a bit tricky.
That's okay. Let me just have a, do you mind if I have a
no, go ahead. So essentially though, the process would be school first, then open market.
Can I ask a really quick question around that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so question would be, with that on page where council have stipulated the price, which is page 88, financial implications, does council see that reducing the expected sale if we were to go to Southern Montessori first?
Right, so the valuation would be the guide for that. And
would we still use the same valuation process if it was going to a direct party rather than open market? Or well, open market would be open market, sorry.
So valuation is valuation, depending on, and I don't think the customer makes the difference.
Okay. I will listen to the.
So you've moved the motion? No. You have not? Okay. So can we go back to the original motion, please, rather than this alternative? So, Councillor Wilkes, can I just, so the original motion is for disposal on the open market. Did you wish to make that amendment? Okay, so thank you, just for clarification. Can we get this one up? Yes, the alternative motion. Yeah, just hang on a second. So I just want to be clear, this is the one that you want to move, Councillor Wilkes, is that correct? We just got that step in. Okay. And I'll just invite one of the officers who might want to just add some commentary to that to support your motion. Go ahead.
So through the Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, we did prepare this motion recognising that council may wish to move to have direct sale or at least offer the first right of sale to Southern Montessori School. And the important thing that this proposed motion picks up is if that was unsuccessful, it would still go to the open market. But importantly for members is that through the consultation process, we need to declare the proposed approach to the disposal of the land. So this would not only amend the recommendation of council, but it would also mean that we would go and amend the consultation engagement plan that is attached to this report. So this recommendation picks up both attributes and makes it clear that we will amend the engagement plan to be consistent with this motion.
Thank you for bringing the consistency in. Councillor Wilkes, did you wish to speak to the motion? You've moved the motion? Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I've just noticed that the exact same 6 and 7 were the same, and I could just insert my.
Yes, the amendment as 6 and 7 on your original. So can they go into this motion? Are they?
I'm sorry for the confusion.
I think they are.
Yes, so 6 and so.
They're your 6 and 7 on here.
So on the original motion that was in the agenda report, there's a 4 and 5.
Yes.
They are the same as 6 and 7.
Correct.
Can you take my 4 and 5 that I submitted earlier?
Yep.
And put that as the 6 and 7? Thank you.
Replacing? Yeah, replace. So that's the motion
thank you.
Putting up?
Yes.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I would love to speak to the motion. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the first part of that discussion, chamber was around allowing the school to have the first take on this land, which we already know that they are leasing and it is doing great things for the community. The 6 and 7 part of the motion is more focused on our direction as a council. So when we've looked at this process and we know that land revocation process is so long, I've been having a lot of conversations with other councillors and also community members and other members of staff about, or we've heard it brought up in planning days, about what we do with the sale of these assets. So previously, the sale of the assets was written into our long-term financial plan that we sell off $3 million worth of assets every year, and we do that for 10 years and it goes to our bottom line. Now, we've been speaking, and I've been speaking about the community, which is why I'm bringing it up now, is about the line of sight for when we sell these assets. Now, that has not been included, the sale of assets to go straight to our bottom line with such a direct line in the long-term financial plan principle. It hasn't been included in our new principle. So by adding 6 and 7, I've tried to say we're not going to focus on the old long-term financial plan where we take the direct sale of our assets and we put it on our bottom line. I'm saying now, let's look at what we're going to sell. So the price that we get from Southern Montessori, let's look at that, and a proceed of that, a small section of that, a small proceed of that goes straight back to the community. So when we do our second report, because we know the revocation of land takes 3 steps. This is the first step. When we do our second revocation of, and the report comes back, we have identified how a portion of the proceeds for the sale of this land will then be able to benefit the community. So when it comes up in the community, which it always does with me, because I love getting out and about and I love talking to people, and they say, hey, I've heard you're selling that building to Roopena, what's happening with the money? And I go, oh, we have a long-term financial plan principle. That's not happening anymore. We can say, look, we've actually, in our long-term financial plan, we've got an alternate plan, and now we're actually going to take, sorry, I shouldn't have associated long-term financial plan.
Also, your time is not correct, so you've got about 5 more seconds.
Okay, all right. So what I'm trying to say is that we're going to take a portion of the sale and put it into a local project that is identified by council in the second report that will come back.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher, are you questioning or seconding the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak? Councillor Pritchard.
Just a question to start with, please.
Go ahead.
Just around this direct negotiation, I just want to make sure that can't be challenged. So obviously there's a provision in the Local Government Act, I'm assuming, that allows us to do that. But can we just get some confidence that
sure.
that's okay?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, Council has a disposal of council land and assets policy. That's the policy that we operate. You can dispose of assets in many ways. You must document the ways that you are doing it. Ordinarily, we would go to the open market, but on certain occasions, it might be worthy to consider other options, and that's what you're doing tonight. So you're documenting why you're doing what you're doing by supporting this report if you choose to do so. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, can I just add some commentary to that, elected members? Thank you for the deputation tonight. That was a great deputation from the school. I think from an administrative point of view, we're always going to look at, well, what is the ultimately a good governance process for us as an organisation? An open market process is always going to tick those governance boxes because you've opened up to anyone in the market who wants to participate. Obviously, the council at its discretion can identify partners who it thinks brings value above and beyond, and therefore a direct negotiation might benefit, which is what is being discussed tonight by some of the elected members. But that's why the crafting of the motion and open market process will always be by default the administrative position, because for that very point, there may well be a participant in the market we're not aware of that says, hey, hold on, you dealt directly with one very worthy cause, but we could have offered you something else, and we obviously haven't looked at that. And from a ministerial point of view, we would be leaning on saying, well, that's what the council's resolved, even though the officer recommendation from a starting point would always be an open market process. That way it covers the council and any risks that might arise from that process.
Thank you. Councillor Platten. Oh, sorry. Councillor Pritchard, do you have another question?
No.
Do you wish to debate? Go ahead. That would require me to press the button. Thank you. I've now done that.
I particularly just wanted to comment around items 6 and 7. I think this introduction of the line of sight aspect to revocation is critical in gaining more community support for some of these items. I think the old long-term financial plan principles and that targeted number may not have led to the right behaviours in the past. And I think that it's important that we can show the local community in an area. And I think hopefully going forwards, we can turn this into a standard policy so that we can introduce this to all of our revocations going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Thimulatis.
Yes, just a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
First question around point 6. So who determines what a portion of a sale is and what our local project will be?
Perhaps the mover of the motion might want to comment, but I'll just see if there's anybody here who's willing to make it. I believe it is the movers. Can I perhaps you can answer that in your debate and at your closing motion. Any further questions?
All right, then we go to point 2. A report will identify projects to be fast tracked. Does that mean there's going to be a list of projects that come and we decide which project is a project that portion of proceeds of sales will go to?
I again will refer that to the mover because I don't believe this hasn't come through administration, but I'm very open if anyone wants to make a comment on that in terms of our existing policy context, because there are policies that we do use that around that way.
Through the Mayor, we would look at project and capital works plan and decipher what was the highest ranked project. I guess determining the word what's local, I assume that's the ward, or are we going ward based? We would normally go city based and place the highest ranked project regardless of where it was in the city, which is probably what the original resolution said.
Yeah, so that's where my debate's going. And I'll debate briefly for 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Elected members, the previous motion, point 6, was actually a very much really clear on, it was doing exactly the same thing, but very, very clear on how it was going to be spent and on local projects. I would have actually liked to have seen council potentially revert back to that wording because it was a lot clearer. Right now, 6 and 7 are fighting with each other, because one says a project, it says a portion, doesn't determine what a portion is, and then it says fast track projects to be identified, which tells me a report then comes back to the chamber. We have 5 or 6 projects. Do we determine that, or do we just have a portion and we leave it to council staff and they go through the priority process and say this is number 1 and bang? So we trying to make things move by slowing it down, or are we trying to make things move? Like, we need to make that decision. So I think there actually needs to be a separate conversation around all land sales and what elected members' decisions are. If the portion is 50%, and if it's direct into that ward, or at least 25% of that has to be in that ward, can it be multiple projects? Can it be multiple small projects? Can it be to fast tracking pathways? It doesn't say that. So 5 and 6 are conflicting for me. And I would rather we revert back to the previous wording because it was a lot more clearer, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Platten.
Thank you, Mayor. In fear of suffering the wrath of my co-councillor, am I able to move an amendment to the amendment?
It's not an amendment. This is a motion. So you would like to move an amendment to this motion?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I haven't sent it in.
And then we'll test it with the chamber, but go ahead.
6, before a portion of sale, so at the beginning.
Do you have that written down to support our dear friends up the front here?
Not really.
Could you read it slowly then?
Yes.
Does he want us to copy the
So
1 to 5 the same then?
Yes.
1 to 5 the same?
And we're only changing point 6.
Are you only changing 6?
The original.
No, the current motion before us. Yeah.
Policy on the fly is always the best way.
Go ahead, councillor.
Okay, an EM session to develop a policy. And then basically I just want to copy and paste what councillor Wilkes had.
Which is item 6.
Item 6.
Yes.
Yes, please. No, just 6.
Just 6. And no 7 or? Sorry, go on, councillor.
Sorry, keeping 7, just amending 6.
And is there anything else that you want on that sentence?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we need to complete.
That's all right.
Number 6. Yes, that one. After financial
an EM
decision.
session to develop a policy for a portion of the sale proceeds to go towards a local project and the remaining support to council's financial. No, sorry. And that this may be applied if developed to this motion.
This may be applied if developed to this motion.
Does that make sense?
So that this motion would be the Councillor Wilkes, just hold your fire there, please. Councillor Platten, would you just like to read that out and to yourself and see if you're satisfied with that?
So an EM session to develop a policy of line of sight.
Of line of sight.
Or.
Is that where you want to be?
Or a portion of the sale go towards a local project and remaining. Yes, I think so.
It's how he would like it. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Happy to take advice if it's not written correctly.
So essentially you're saying that the EM session policy development will be retrospective to this motion.
That's right.
Okay, I just double checking with we're not breaking any rules. I think we are okay. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I, along with Councillor Wilkes, and I'm sure a lot of people in this chamber would feel very comfortable about a line of sight. When we have some quite contentious things in our communities that are potentially revocated or buildings sold, it would be nice to be able to point to projects in the same community and say, this is what we've used the money for, not just this is a giant bucket that we've put the money into and we've used it for I don't really know what. So I think, and I'm certainly not speaking for Councillor Wilkes, but I think what I'm trying to do is develop a policy that we can use for revocation moving forward in an EM session where we can speak about what that might look like, that we can approach what the portion might be, where the proceeds might go and who might decide on what project we're going to use that for. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, are you seconding this amendment?
No.
Okay. Do you wish to speak? Councillor Wilkes, are you not to that motion, not at that moment. Okay. Councillor Wilkes, are you seconding the motion? No, you can't. All right. Councillor Dew.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Has it changed the initial intent? Like, is this allowed? Because now we've introduced an EM session.
I think this is a process. I don't think it's getting in the way of the intention.
Okay, sure.
If the intention is to be moving forward and finding ways in which we can bring this to fruition.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Do you wish to speak?
Oh, goodness.
You can say no. No is also allowed.
I don't want to give up my opportunity. Okay, I'm happy to speak. This has been made more complicated than I feel like it originally it was meant to be. What has been in my mind this whole time is the significant contribution that Montessori makes to our local community, and it's one of the standout schools in the southern region. I've seen the Roopena building used from the children's before with the Children's Centre, and now hearing about the work that you're doing and the integration that you want to have and the holistic way in which you want families to be supported in the southern area can only strengthen our community vision. And I think that there's a lot of alignment on what you talk to around philosophically, your connection with the environment, building leadership, community capacity is exactly what our intentions are going forward for the next 10 years. So with that in mind, I felt very comfortable with City of Onkaparinga directly connecting with Southern Montessori and negotiating an outcome. And then again, if that doesn't, if that's unsuccessful, then go into the open market. I think that what I recall is currently they're leasing the facility from us, and what we heard was they're wanting to use childcare at the site. There's national quality standards and expectations when you provide a childcare that the facility is up to scratch, which I guess I know the facility and it wouldn't be at the moment. And so that would add a whole nother layer of complexity and us retaining the building when we've been having many conversations around the revocation of facilities, particularly those that are we're having to, I guess, invest so much in just to keep up to a standard. So I completely, I feel like the community would support this. We need quality education, we need quality early childhood spaces, and therefore I'm absolutely in support of this. And I felt like Councillor Wilkes' initial intention of being very clear around a portion of the sale going back into community was really about that narrative that community have, not just us have a direct line of sight of the policy, but community have a direct line of sight of where money's going, because it is a challenge for our community every time we revocate that they want to see what they're getting out of that. And this provides a platform for us to start that conversation, to develop a policy that's in line with community expectations. So I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Yeomans.
Just a question and a quick comment, if I can. So just the question is, do we get to, if assuming this gets carried and we make the first approach to the school, when the report comes back, do we get to see the valuation there as opposed to a valuation that we would get through the open market?
It's the same valuation. The value is the value. It's not.
Okay.
All right. Markets often decide things.
Yep. So that's fine. So
we have a valuation.
So the school would need to pay market value. Is that
correct?
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
And just a quick 1 minute comment. Thank you for Councillor Platten for clarifying the policy position. I can see where Councillor Wilkes was going with this, but I was a little bit nervous that we're perhaps developing policy, a policy position within a revocation process. So that seems to delineate that pretty well. So thanks for sorting that out. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak against this motion, or the amendment to this motion.
Okay.
I have concerns about it. I do agree that with Councillor Dew that it has become more complicated. However, and I also can see that there's good intention in what Councillor Wilkes is recommending. However, I'm just really concerned that it's just outside our long-term financial plan principles. It's outside and doesn't meet our decision-making commitments that we've set and we've worked for the last 8 months. It's the sort of thing that I see that we can be discussing and talking about and deciding in the future. And I think that we could be including it, for example, in the planned elected member workshops for the long-term debt that we're planning in November. I think, councillors, we need a bit more, dare I say it, a bit more discipline to remind ourselves of what we have been doing in the last 8 months. We need to consider here what we putting first. We're putting the community vision first. we've got to focus on our long-term outcomes. We've got to ensure that we've got justifiable rationales. I'm reading from the commitments here. We have to ensure that we're aligned with our strategic paths. We have to promote equity and fairness. We have to provide pathways for partnerships, which is what we obviously can be doing still with Montessori, and I recognise and acknowledge the wonderful work they do in the community. We've got socio-economic, environmental, cultural considerations, sustainability, health and wellbeing, advocacy. It's just, I prefer to go back to the original motion, is my view. I won't be voting for this, sorry.
Councillor Fisher.
Mayor, ditto, basically. I think we strayed too much. We are in the area of policy making. We're not sticking to the plan. I understand the sentiment behind the additions or alterations to 8 and 9, but I think we just go too far. So it will not be supported.
Councillor Wilkes.
Am I allowed to debate sorry, I'm not familiar with
this amendment. At the moment, what we're doing is determining whether this.
Yes, I debated previously. I opened. Am I allowed to debate?
You can close at the end, but you can't do debate now.
That's what I was looking for.
So I'm going to ask Councillor Platten if he wishes to close. I don't think he can. No, you got a question, Councillor Jean? No, you haven't. Councillor Yeomans, did you have a question?
On the process, because concurring with what's been said by my co-councillors to the right, I would hope this motion to be not carried in the holistic side, because then
we'll go back. At the moment, we're debating the amendment. So if this the amendment Councillor Platten put up, so if this passes or fails, then if it passes, then if it fails, rather, we go back to the original amendment. Original motion that was put by Councillor Wilkes. So at the moment, we are debating this amendment. Councillor Jew, did you have a question?
I have a question about the governance and the meeting process, just so I'm clear. Yes. So if we vote this motion down, it goes back to the original motion. Correct. We then make a determination whether we.
Yes.
Yep. And then can we all, if someone moves a motion, is it then open to anyone to debate, or is it back to just those who want to debate?
To Councillor Wilkes' motion that and those people who have already spoken are unable to speak, and the person who opened the debate can close the debate. And I'm just checking with anyone here if I'm telling the truth or I'm making things up as I go along.
One's knocked back.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too. Yes, we can still do amendments, and I don't want to direct the chair, but it seems to me that there's two pieces here. One is the revocation piece, and the other is the distribution of funds piece.
Yes.
So it may be in the interest of the chamber to consider those separately as well. But at the moment, what we've currently got before us for your consideration at this junction in the meeting is whether you vote on Councillor Platten's amendment that is before you. So I am going to ask Councillor Platten again if he wants to close the debate, and he can do that now.
Thank you. It just dawned on me that I didn't thank Heather for her presentation, so thank you. Councillors, my interpretation is that if you don't vote for me, and I'm not about winning, that we then go back to the mystery of what proportions and what I've tried to achieve in a very disjointed way. I think I could have written it better if I had more time, was that we can sit down and form a policy or not form a policy. It's a big if developed, I guess, in there. At an EM session. So I'd leave it to the chamber But I would like to see some sort of line of sight policy. I would like to develop that so that we're not just making policy on the fly. So I leave it in your very capable hands.
So I'm going to put this motion as it stands, and we'll also provide you with the reminder that there are two themes operating here. So let's just put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion. How many? Can I just do that again? All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion is carried. So that is now the motion that we put. And so I'll put the motion, and I'm just checking, is this, who can speak to close? Councillor Wilkes, this is now the motion. Can you use your opportunity to close?
Awesome. Thank you. Look, to go back to the schools and how we've outlined that they're going to be our one and only, not our one and only, they're going to be our first negotiator. I think if there's an issue in the community, that will be picked up in the community engagement piece. So I feel comfortable at this point with that as our stance, and to go out with community consultation stating that Montessori will be on, our first buyer, knowing that they will, pay the same price as what we would have got on open market. So I feel comfortable with that. In regards to my 6 and 7. 6 and 7 now amended. Sorry for the wording, Marion. I am human and I have a baby and lots of kids at home. So sometimes I miss S's and you know what? I really wish they would all come out perfectly, but that's just not me. But with regards to the project, I just wanted to address it because you did bring that up, and I should have called Councillor Thaminio, sorry about that. Look, I trust the staff, and I wanted to use this as a test case in a way, but I trust the staff to use either the CPW. The intent was hopefully it would be a very small portion, 10%. I was hoping that the staff would sort of get where we're going with this, that our community wants to see something, not 50%, not 100%, because we have plans that the other councillors have highlighted. We have plans that say that all of the land that we have, which is a lot of land, we're going to start revocating it to get our debt down. So I think it was really important for my motion that I left it at council's discretion to offer a small portion that they thought would be suitable. Thought it would have been from the CWP. I thought it could have also, been at something that they would offer. Okay, so ideally, I do think that we have a policy that has a line of sight. I think that goes against where we were heading as a council with land revocation and trying to get that money that we make from land revocation to sell down. So I'm a little bit upset that it's been written into this motion because I think it takes away the intent of this being a test case. And now we've got this brand new policy wrapped up in a revocation that we're going to see come back to us 3 times. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that. The mayor also pointed that out, and I think I hope that doesn't take away from the intent of this small portion of the sale of proceeds going to community. Really, I hope that doesn't take away from that intent, and now we have to develop a whole policy. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that.
So your time's up, councillor.
Sure.
I'll just summarise where we're up to. So when I put the motion, you are aware of what we're doing. So we're supporting revocation. We're supporting the first call is for Montessori and at market value. We are working on a process which will include the elected members developing a policy around line of sight, and in that process that will be part of the community consultation. We'll have some parameters around that as a council. For instance, we do need to talk to the community about how those funds would be distributed. So probably elected members session would need to be a precursor for some of that activity. So while this motion is has a sequential numbering system, it may not happen in the sequence of 1 to 7, but they will all happen, and we will need to get some advice to make sure that they do follow in the sequence that is intended by the chamber with this decision. So I will now put this motion. All those in favour? No. Do you wish to ask a question? Go ahead. I think I've closed the debate. The debate has been closed by the mover. So all those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. So thank you for sitting through all of that. If you do want us to come and demonstrate debate at Montessori anytime, please let us know. We are past our 8:30 where we do have a break. So I am going to break the meeting for 10 minutes and I'll ask councillors to come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Can I have a mover for a 10-minute break, please? Councillor Dew, Councillor Platten, all in favour? Thank you. Okay, I think we have a quorum back, so we will reconvene our meeting. We are up to item 9.3, Aldinga Library and Multi-Use. This is page 109 on the electronic version. Councillor Yeomans.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'd like to make a couple of amendments if I can.
Go ahead.
I'll flick those through. Are they there? How about that?
Yep. So you just want to double check that they are the ones you want?
Okay, so just for the information of the chamber, number 1 remains the same. And I've asked for 2, 3 and 4 from the papers to be removed, and you just simply there we note the report. And then there's a third recommendation there that the report goes to the ARC to consider the appropriateness for the fee and provide some feedback.
Do you wish to debate?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead.
Some comments about that if I can. One of the main reasons I moved this motion back in January was all about the efficient use of resources to ensure we're making the best use of our money we're spending in providing the community services at Aldinga. Of concern to me was the long-term lease arrangements in place for the library and the youth centre, which is some $700,000 per year. Working with the state government, I worked in a number of buildings where that were leased, so I'm cognizant that these arrangements exist within government. That said, long-term financial decisions require as much information as possible. We are the ones making the decisions here. A decision on this library and surrounding facilities at Aldinga will have an impact on the budget and the long-term financial plan, whether we decide to continue the lease or we decide to build a new complex. To take some words from the Mayor's report on page 9, if I may, short-term thinking has dominated council decisions in the past and consequently been at the expense of our city's long-term needs. I'm not ready to extend the lease of the library yet, as the recommendation 4 would have us do in the papers for a number of reasons. I don't have enough information to make a responsible decision as to whether to continue leasing this library at the current rate or consider the option of building a new facility at Aldinga to cater for a library as well as other services, including commercial opportunities that may exist in reducing the cost to the ratepayer. Firstly, I'd like a report presented to the ARC to enable that committee to provide advice to the chamber on the financial implications on the long-term financial plan and the pros and cons of leasing versus owning this library and any other advice they deem fit to provide. The ARC has already demonstrated a willingness to advise council on matters it considers it needs in order to fulfil its legislative role. Reports such as the ESCOSA report and now the tabled presiding members report are good examples. In my opinion, noting that I'm on the ARC, this appetite to provide the advice to council should be embraced. Furthermore, it would greatly help our thinking if there were opportunities presented for our consideration that would help to offset the cost of building a new facility. I'm talking about a business case where assets that are surplus to the needs of council could be repurposed to help pay for the asset, notwithstanding the principles of the long-term financial plan. Or, for instance, the youth centre to cohabit with the rec centre, as noted in the report, which will save $170,000 per year. Council does own land at Aldinga in the vicinity of the library and the rec centre. With 2 elections taking place prior to the expiry of this current lease, there's also opportunities to advocate for grant funding for this community asset. It's not necessarily the case that building a new complex equates to the total cost being added to existing borrowings. We do need to look outside the square sometimes. We also need to explore the opportunities to revisit the cost of the lease for both the library and the youth centre with the intention of securing a better outcome for the ratepayers. Whilst depreciating assets is an expense, one would consider new facilities at Aldinga would only grow in value. The report notes that after 28 years, building a library becomes more financially viable. So do we bite the bullet now? I'm not sure. We shouldn't be making any decisions prior to the completion of the community facilities district planning process at Aldinga. It'd be nice if that work was a priority. I suggest the lawyers be a library at Aldinga. It comes down to this. Are we better off continuing the long-term lease versus owning a purpose-built facilities? I would like more information and further discussion on this prior to committing either way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eaton. Councillor Yeomans, would you mind just popping? Thank you. Councillor Eaton.
Yes, I'd like to second the motion. What I see this does is actually give us a little bit of an independent review. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard. Question or debate?
Debate.
Go ahead.
I think this is a good motion, and I would like to thank Councillor Yeomans for raising the Aldinga Library as a topic. Really, I think anecdotally there was a bit of chatter in the community around the cost of it, so I think that bringing this to the surface is fantastic. I would also like to thank the council for providing the 2013 report. That was a very thorough piece of work that was conducted back then, and I was going to say it's a shame, but the master plan for Aldinga and that zone and how that whole area was going to interact and the facilities that were going to be on it looked amazing, and it is a shame that that hasn't come to fruition yet. I don't know how we can contribute to making that area what it was hoped to be with regards to the land that council owns in that area and the land that is undeveloped that is owned by others. But revisiting that master plan and working out how we can contribute to that would be fantastic for that area, because I think it is underutilised, and how we contribute to that would be good.
Councillor Jew, question or debate?
Debate, thank you. I'm in support of the motion. I feel like it coming to ARC for greater perspective is not just about accountability for administration, but actually it's about accountability for us as a council chamber and having rigour and depth in our decision making. And we can see from the chairperson's report and also the feedback that we receive from Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Yeomans every time the item's on the agenda is that there's quality in the discussion and outcome of what they're deliberating on. I'd like to thank Matt and the team, and particularly around the modelling that was done in the session that you took Councillor Yeomans and I through, and it really demonstrated that there's no right way going forward at this stage, but building more perspective and having more information would be great. And the district planning, I guess, couldn't come soon enough for us to take sort of a bird's eye view at the city as citywide, but then also crunching down to a district level. I don't know if it's possible at all, but it would be wonderful if ARC could also consider creative ways that we could start to think about projects of this scale being funded. I don't know if that's the role of ARC, but more creativity around it rather than just the reliance on government funding. If there's any, other perspectives around that, that would be wonderful, and maybe something that ARC could deliberate on as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Yeomans, do you wish to close debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried unanimously. Fast tracking footpaths. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll speak to the motion, move the motion as written, and debate.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As you recall, councillors, a notice of motion to investigate the acceleration of the capitally funded footpath program was presented at the 18th June council meeting. I want to acknowledge, as I did at the time, the efforts of Councillor Thimothy and Pritchard as well, and a number of other councillors that this holds dear to their heart. I could give you a spiel on 2.5 minutes on footpaths and the benefit of it, but I've done that before. But what we did work out and what we did understand was the fact that our current service levels for footpaths are for local roads in urban areas to have a 1.2 metre wide footpath installed on one side of the road, and collector and distributor roads in urban areas have a 1.5 wide footpath installed on both sides of the road, and arterial roads in urban areas to have a 1.8 wide footpath installed on both sides of the road, and these are presented as an appendix to the Strategic Asset Management Plan. So to meet the current demands, as we worked out before, we have 432 kilometres of footpaths requiring construction, costing current unit rates of an estimated $100 million. And assuming an average budget allocation of 2.2 million per annum, this equates to about 47 years before the footpath network is completed if current service levels and budgets are retained. What is recommended in this motion is that the existing footpath service level is reduced such that footpaths are not duplicated on higher order roads. And I welcome any questions of admin in relation to those definitions, unless there is a practical safety need to better reflect community demand and expectations, whilst providing a cost saving to council. Adoption of this modification would see the footpath network being completed in approximately 39 years. It's still a long time, and costing an estimated 86.8 million, but it's a saving overall of 13.2 million and a reduction in the total delivery by 8 years. This change has been presented in attachment 1. So that particular paragraph talks about the service level, and maybe I'll get some clarification just with a question just before I finish up. Opportunities for additional funding have also been explored, including the use of capital surplus generated from other projects within the same financial year and applying for relevant state and federal grants. So members, the question I asked them, Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
So Morgan, thank you for all your work you've done as well. Can you just explain to the chamber just in relation to the existing footpath service level?
What is
the change?
Yeah, the change of the service level.
Through the Mayor, so footpaths, like you mentioned, are duplicated at the moment on higher order roads. Essentially, that's anything that is classified in our road network plan as a higher order than a local road. So collector, distributor, subarterial and arterial roads would all have duplicated footpaths as per the current service level. To elaborate, I suppose, on the changes that are proposed, we wouldn't be as a standard duplicating those paths. There might be instances, as we've mentioned in the report, and I think there was a worked example in there where they may be required, but the default will be to assume that they will just have a single path on those streets and only duplicate as necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you. I was just going to finish.
Oh, sorry.
So I urge you to vote for the resolution. Thank you.
I apologise. Councillor Pritchard.
Happy to second the motion.
Go ahead. Do you wish to speak?
Only just to say I think this is a really good example of some new thinking and a great way of tackling a challenging problem for us. So I think this is a practical solution that provides a tangible benefit for us, which is great.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Fisher, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mayor, but no, I think it's all been said.
All righty. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried unanimously. It's been a night of innovation. So there we go. Thank you very much. Number 9.5, the Climate Change Response Plan. And do I have a mover? Councillor Themiotis.
Yes, happy to move. Nothing much to say, but to thank council staff for the progression of the plan and the work that's happened so far.
Thank you. Councillor Platten,
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment if I can.
go ahead. Sorry, we have to have a seconder for the motion. You second and then do an amendment? No, so we need a seconder for the motion first. It's an addition.
It's not that big, but that's okay.
Councillor Fisher, you're seconding the motion?
So second.
Thank you very much. Councillor Platten.
Hello again. I'd love to propose an amendment if I can, which I have provided to staff. It's all about writing a letter. The Mayor write a letter to the South Australian Premier on behalf of the city to express that, given our strong track record, we stand ready to support a bid for COP, and I'd like to add 31, and highlight the various sites and initiatives within our region that could be of interest to convention delegates.
So just after COP 31. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
To speak to it. As much as I can't even tell you how much I love mayoral letters, I think it's really important to showcase how amazing our city is. We're the biggest metropolitan city council in South Australia. And if this was to come here, it would be a travesty for it not to come to our council. We have so many initiatives, so much coastline, so many amazing things that we can showcase to delegates, and I think it needs to be put on the Premier's table.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, are you seconding the motion?
I wish to second the amendment, yes.
And do you wish to speak to it?
Required.
Indeed.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And just say, obviously, that I'm very excited to see this come through and congratulate the staff. And I feel very proud to be an elected member here in the city of Ongaparinga, a council that is leading the way on climate and climate resilience and coastal adaptation, etc. So I just support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Platten, do you wish to close this amendment motion?
I would hope everyone votes for it.
Okay, I will put this as the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? That becomes the motion. Councillor Themiolotis, do you wish to close? I'll put the motion as the motion. Motion as the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried unanimously, and I look forward to signing that letter. As always, our council rebates, item 9.6. Councillor Pritchard.
I would like to move the motion as written.
And do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just rather than briefly, just quickly, I would like to highlight the fact that we've introduced the annual review of discretionary rebates, which I think is a necessary step with regards to those discretionary rebates.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Eaton?
I'll second it. Nothing to say.
Any questions? Debate? Councillor Pritchard? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried unanimously. Again, another piece of innovation tonight with that annual review. We now come to the election of the Local Government Association President. We do have a ballot paper. Have we got papers for the individual? So just to remind you all that there are 5 nominations. The nominations have been put on the ballot paper based on their draw. The nominations are Jane Lomax-Smith, Michael Coxon, Chris Hanna, Heather Holmes-Ross and Claire Bone. You've all received documentation through your emails from each of these. Our 2 returning officers this evening, directors Richardson and Stobie, thank you very much. I'm asking you, is it a first past the post electoral process? So if you would please put your preferred candidate, one name on it, and then we will declare who we will be supporting with the local government. Yes. Oh, thank goodness for that. I have no idea. You get to vote. When we do committees and all that stuff, so I'm sure we do that.
I don't think I've got to vote. I can't move the motion. No. Apparently, I've got to vote. Is that true? Do I get to vote?
In the ballot, the mayor gets to vote, I think. Yeah.
I feel like we need to have some music while this is going on. Once we have the vote to the nomination from our chamber, I will need one of you to move that motion. Perhaps Councillor Davis might do that as an opportunity. We've got even numbers. No, okay. Okay. So if I can ask Councillor Davis if you'd be willing to move this motion. Why not? You need an opportunity. The votes are in and our returning officer has advised that it's the Mayor Heather Holmes-Ross, the Mayor of Mitcham, would be receiving our votes. So would you be willing to make that as a nomination? Yes, I will. Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Fisher, was that you?
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. That motion's carried. I will put that in. Thank you, everyone. The next item, 9.8. I know that's very exciting. 9.8 is the confidential items quarterly review. I'll just sign those. Councillor Fisher.
I'll move.
Thank you very much. Councillor Platten.
Happy to second.
Any questions? Debate? Councillor Fisher?
No.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 9.9 is our council reporting schedule. I do have a question for this one myself, and that is about the 2025 calendar year. When did we get the dates of those?
Through the chair, so when we've had the report to council in December, that's when we will set the dates for meetings. We can probably assume it's going to be much the same, but when we get that resolution, we'll send those dates through.
Thank you. Councillor Themiolotis.
Yes, to move. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Platten.
Happy to second.
Any questions? Debate? All those in favour? Motion's carried. Questions on notice. Some of those will be in the minutes and some are in the agenda this evening. Some are also in your yellow folders attached. Item 11.1, motions of notice. Councillor Wilkes.
Now, I've touched on a couple of these things tonight. One of them is I'm human and I had to include the old motion in the agenda report, but that is not at all a reflection of the motion in front of you. What I've done with the motion in front of you is I've taken the first blurb from my motion that was in the agenda report and I have dot pointed it out. And then all of the aspects that I wanted in the fund that I had highlighted below, I have deleted them because I felt like it was unnecessary to completely and utterly demand council explore different parts of the motion. So what you see in front of you is a summary of that motion that was in the agenda report. And it's hopefully a lot clearer with what I would like staff to do. Now, I think tonight, if we have realised anything, it's that if you don't have a plan, revocation of land can become quite messy. And then we are writing policies inside the revocation. So what my motion is planning on doing, this one here, it is aligning the revocation of land that is identified with sporting projects. And hopefully council will be able to create a report that outlines whether or not that land will be able to be used for an upgrade of sporting facilities. I've also would like council to look into commercialisation of our sporting facilities. And if they can use that commercialisation money to go into the fund. I'm also hoping that council will explore, it doesn't have to be a guaranteed, but I'm hoping council will explore a direct revenue rate percentage to go into the fund. And I am also hoping that they will identify whether this is achievable in a certain time frame. Now, the reason I have done that is because we have our long-term financial plan that outlines, well, at the moment it's out for community consultation, it outlines scenario 2, but we have stated that we will not do any renewal expenditure for 1 year, no new and significant upgrades. And it's also talked about the hardcore pressures relating to the sport and activity recreation assets. So the capital expenditure in our scenario 2 long-term financial plan draft says that we will have a $32.8 million non-injection for 4 years. So I really feel like our sporting facilities need to have a dedicated fund explored that can update the standard of the facility based on what the facility managers themselves think. I'd like council to explore actually ring fencing the money that's already going into the community facilities, so sporting facilities, so we can see how that happens. Now, at the moment, council's looking at their community district planning model, and I'm assuming that's going to include the sale of some assets so we condense what we are offering to the community. And again, that is why I'm hoping that the sale of those assets will be funded back into the sporting facilities, and we won't have to go through the same process when we revocate that land to try and earmark land that we know is associated with sporting facilities. We won't have to try and funnel it in somehow. So I hope council will be able to produce a report that really shows a clear line of sight for clubs, that we have a plan that is going to give them a pot of money so that they can develop their sporting facilities in a certain, with grant funding opportunities. All right. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to listen to the debate, and then I'm going to close it.
Councillor Themialotis.
Can I ask one question before debating? Question to the mover. Is there a time frame when you want this report delivered?
Ideally, I would like it to be done as quickly as possible to align with the budget cycle coming up. But because we have already said, I've spoken at length with council about the time frame, and on the original report I've put up November. That's definitely not doable. We've talked about December or January, but they have said that they will get it to me in a feasible time frame.
So there's no specific timeline at stage. Seeking advice from council administration for that. Go ahead, councillor.
I'm happy to second and debate.
Go ahead.
Elected members, a number of us have had conversations, and I know I've had multiple conversations with Councillor Fisher around a sporting funding bucket. We've had these same conversations with the Onkaparinga Clubs Forum as well. Now, when we had those conversations with the Onkaparinga Clubs Forum, it was when we were going through that tough budget. And we were both saying, you know, there's no money available. It's really tough at the moment. We've got to make some really harsh decisions to make things easier for clubs down the track and to show them future and a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. The issue we have now is we're actually pushing new projects down the track. So the light is now it's sort of getting in the further distance for our clubs. However, we do have a list of priority projects, and a number of them are sporting projects. And a lot of our clubs know about those projects and they want to be able to apply for grant funding. And a lot of us have heard the old saying of it's 50-50 and we need to be able to find that funding. And some clubs have bars and have the ability to generate some funds. And there's some clubs that have the smallest canteen or collect cans and literally don't have the ability to generate 50-50. So it's about giving a bit of equitability between our sporting clubs as well, and showing them that there is a direction and they are a part of our budget process. So what Councillor Wilkes is doing is kind of bringing that all together. So all those discussions she's had with her clubs, with the Onkaparinga Clubs Forum as well, with elected members, is about bringing that together and having a piece that we can go out to our clubs and say, this is our position now, but here's the light at the end of the tunnel. So elected members, I hope you will support this as a first step, getting a report back. Let's get some information and go from there.
Councillor Pritchard, question or debate?
Question to start with. Thank you. Just a question as to how do we currently see this fund being separate from the PCW funding bucket that currently resides against sports clubs for new and significant and renewal?
So is that a question for the mover?
No, probably for administration if they have an opinion on whether this is different to current NS.
I'll just invite the CEO to comment on that.
Through the Mayor, to be perfectly honest, we haven't thought through that in any detail. The PCW has been our mechanism for prioritising. So if there was a separate fund, we'd have to work out how and if that was plausible and can be done. So we haven't given enough thought to be able to give you any definitive advice at this point.
Just a follow-up question, I guess. Historically, does a reserve, because I know we have a number of reserves, does that offer any benefit to the council that you can speak of for this debate, as to how a separate bucket of money might benefit us?
Take that. Or do you take it too? You happy to take that?
Through the Mayor, previously when we had a number of different reserves, it's basically worked through PCW. So you had the reserve, you would show as a reserve transfer against a particular project, but you would still use PCW to actually prioritise the work that was to be done, because that was seen as the most equitable way of distributing council's budget in any given year. With regards to having a separate fund, it's probably no different than the previous report where you're talking about, a community fund line of sight. It's more really how you segregate your budget down so that you can actually create the line of sight more so, because at the end of the day, you've got 100% of your budget and 100% of your budget spent on the community. So.
I'm just trying to formulate that third question. I guess the third question is around sporting clubs and where they fall between a renewal project and a new and significant upgrade. I reference the Port Noarlunga Football Club function space, and would a fund or a reserve, in council's opinion or view, alleviate that discrepancy between applying for sport and rec funding, or would it contribute to being able to provide funding for a function facility that sits outside of the sport and rec grant funding? If that makes sense.
So those that fall in between
it.
So that they may well be emerging projects or perhaps an emergency project, something like that?
Well, yeah, I guess it's an upgrade, but it's not an upgrade for sport under the definition of office and sport and rec, maybe.
Got it.
Through the Mayor, I think that would be unlikely. The criteria around the grants are quite specific on what they attribute money to and not to, and we look to align with that through our projects. I think with this particular resolution and the alignment to the community facilities district planning work, there's a secondary piece of work that's required in that, which is to then take the outcomes of that work and actually then apply the asset lens across it, which is probably more in line with the first and second, or the first one in particular, as to what we have, what we need, where do we need it, and when do we need it, is probably the key piece that will fall out of the community facilities work. That's a fairly detailed piece of work, but I guess that's the piece that's going to pull this all together.
I guess debate.
Go ahead.
I have had many conversations with Councillor Wilkes around this, stretching back to when we first joined council and we were all fresh-faced and innocent, and all wanted to solve all the problems of the world without knowing that people have already tried before. I think the intent that I had in my head originally was this idea of a revolving fund, in a sense, where all the contributions from sporting clubs, from both council's contribution, but also the sponsorship, the gate fees, the ground signage, the bar takings potentially are all contributing to a singular fund where, in a revolving way, the most needy next sports club could access that fund to contribute to their project, which is in somehow above and beyond what the PCW supplies, and without touching the rates revenue, or increasing or allocating additional rate to sports clubs. My 99-year-old grandpa had told the story of when he was an apprentice, and they had a suit fund, and the group of them would all contribute their penny or shilling or whatever it was at the time, and one person would get to buy a suit each pay period until they all had a suit, and then they would go and do the next thing. And somehow I thought that this might be something similar, and I'm not sure if this motion achieves that outcome around of producing a communal fund that collects both council grant and external revenue and gives us more benefits than what we're doing with just allocating our PCW through prioritisation and new and significant upgrades. I mean, I still see that there is a way that, that council signage and naming rights and bits and pieces could be external revenue and should be contributing direct to those sporting clubs that they're supporting. Is that part of this motion? I'm still not sure.
Thank you. Councillor Dew. Question or debate?
I have a few questions, please.
Go ahead.
One is to the mover, Councillor Wilkes. I'm just trying to understand what the motions, like what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Is that okay?
It is okay, but I might encourage you, if you've got a question for staff, because that may support Councillor Wilkes. Your question may support her with her summing up and her.
Oh, okay, sure.
So let's ask questions of staff.
Okay. Sorry, I haven't given you notice of this, but approximately what percentage of our existing budget is spent on sport and recreation?
Through the mayor, actually doing a bit of work on that at the moment. In the last 5 years, we spent $6.6 million per annum on sport and recreation facilities. So that's our second highest expenditure against roads.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm also interested in what the benefits would be of this, but maybe that's through the report, or maybe Councillor Wilkes might like to.
I'll let Councillor Wilkes do that in her summing up.
Okay, I'm just going to debate. The only bit of the debate I have really is that we're prioritising one level of participation in our city, which is sport and recreation. And I know we've just heard here that over $6 million is spent of our budget, but I think about the arts, I think about other contributors across our city that it's all about participation, and there's no reference at all in this to the community plan. So I'd really love to see if this was to get up some direct outcome for our community plan and what that's trying to achieve. But again, I go back to, if we were to prioritise our number one priority, if we are putting so much emphasis on sport and recreation, is that our number one priority? I don't know. It might be, and that therefore absolutely I would support this. But what we've continued to hear throughout the process that we've been undertaking is around environment, footpath, a whole range of things that could be ring-fenced with funding around. And I go back to that broader conversation around participation and the breadth of value that not just sport and rec brings, but a whole gamut of different opportunities for participation. So I'm just, I have more questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, question or debate? Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I will start with a question, if I may. I'd just like to ask the CEO what he sees as any concerns or risks, please, particularly given what we've been through in the last few months and with the long-term financial plan and the SAMP, please.
Thank you, councillor. Through the mayor, wonderful question. Look, I think the intent behind what councillor Wilkes has put forward has been something that she's discussed and others have raised for a while, which is support sporting clubs. The challenge that I see is that there is already some work that's afoot and yet not yet complete. So we have imperfect data around what the needs of the city are beyond just sports. Sports is one element, but community facilities, etc. There's a whole raft of data we need to be able to do that forward planning. The second element that I see is a bit of a challenge for us is we've just gone through the long-term financial plan. It's our community consultation at the moment. And the council resolved very specifically not to do new significant upgrades and pause it for a year. So on the one hand, we're trying to support sporting clubs by advancing some of these projects, but you've made a clear decision that you've gone to community with to stick to the long-term financial plan, which sees debt reduced by around 50 million over the next 10 years. So in my mind, the congruency around the strategies that we're doing, we're sort of debating that here tonight on a number of fronts, on a number of topics. But as officers, we're trying to sort of stick to the plan and have a measured approach to that. And so it's about how do we take on board the feedback from the elected members of building to our existing policies and strategy reviews and get the timing and sequencing right. Otherwise, the left hand is pushing on this front, and the right hand is pushing on the long-term financial plan front, which is also an endorsed position of council. So that's something that I think elected members should take on board in terms of trying to debate this and whether this is the right forum. Certainly in terms of the timing, I thank Councillor Wilkes for having some flexibility with the timing. Trying to do this in a short time frame while those other pieces of work are happening would mean that we would actually have an incomplete picture of the city, and we were doing policy a little bit on the run, trying to solve one equation without actually understanding what that might mean for the rest of the piece of the work we're doing at the moment. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, councillor, but I understand what the intent is. I just think that it's a little bit preemptive in terms of the other work that we're doing, and we need a much more planned and considered approach before we land an answer.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. It's just confirming the concerns that I've had.
Wish to debate,
if I may.
Okay.
Yes, it's just confirming the concerns that I have, and I recognise that we get requests every day for assistance with funding, but I think it's premature, given the work that we've done and the commitments that we've got to goals and objectives for our long-term financial plan. It throws out the window all the processes that council already has that we value and respect, or we try to appropriately in the proper forums to address or improve. So for that reason, and many others, because the other concern I have is where's the money going to go? Where's it going to come from? How much money we're going to give them? All these sorts of things really need to be sat down and discussed, and in a considered way. And of course, as I've mentioned before, we've got a number of workshops coming up, in particular on the long-term debt. It sets a precedent. It really sets a bit of favouritism, unfortunately. I know the intent is good, but I don't think it's appropriate, and I won't be supporting it. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Mayor, I support the recommendation. It's a starting point. It's certainly not binding in relation to any policies that we may have developed elsewhere. It talks about a citywide response. It uses the Community Facilities Development Fund as a title for that. But if you go down to, for instance, item 5, the possibility of ring fencing. So the possibility would include the fors and against. So I'm all for a report that comes back and addresses what we can do and what we can't do, and what is consistent and what is not consistent with our long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Councillor Eaton.
It's the other matter that needs to be considered, and this is the 3 community-owned sports facilities that have to find all their own money. Their participants all pay their rates and those sorts of things. So if we're going to do this, we've got to take those 3 facilities, that's Wollonga, McLaren Vale and Cherry Gardens and Ironback. They have to be considered as well, if we're going to be fair.
Thank you. Any further questions, debate? Councillor Wilkes, do you wish to close debate? Can you press your button on, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for your comments and your views on this motion before you. It was my 4th draft of the fund, and I appreciate everyone's time who has given to me to discuss different avenues of the fund and how their community have wanted to influence it and what they feel like would be a great starting point to acknowledge getting some more money into our sporting facilities. So I see this as planning ahead. Councillor Pritchard, we definitely did speak about scaling all of our sporting facility buildings and putting them on a system where you have the most neglected one, or the list of the most dilapidated one, and they're all funding into it, and then we updo that one, and lots of different models have been discussed of how this could work. I ended up moving away from that because it's like, okay, the idea first is that we need to start somewhere. We need to align it to something. So the community plan we've gotten here for Councillor Yoursay, to answer your question, the idea of the fund is to get more money into sporting facilities. I've heard and see on a very regular basis how substandard our facilities are, especially sort of compared to our other communities around us. So this is really driven from my community clubs that come to me and say that they would like to see more money funneled into their facilities. It hits the community plan with the goals for community built on individual and community's capacity to identify and drive common purposes and local solutions. So the common purpose is really of the community, and increases the availability of services, programs, activities and events which improve people's physical and mental well-being. So that will hit that one. For the livability, it increases the inclusivity and the quality of spaces and places for the enjoyment of all. And then on the back, we've got in our livability vision statement, we've got a raft of statements of how we can make people feel comfortable in their home. But it's interesting that sporting facilities are not included in our livability vision statement. So I would love to see a bit of a strong factor come through there. So this is not asking for money. It's just asking to explore the possibility of working with the Community Facility District Plan. It's asked to be included in the planning that the council are working on and the planning that the council are currently doing. It's open-ended, so staff they're not pressured to align this with their long-term, sorry, I'm getting all nervous. This is, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, so I'm not, it's open-ended. The timeframe is open-ended because I'd really like the council staff to look at our council's future strategy on updating our buildings and how we are going to increase them. I'd really hope that you support it so that we can get a report back that identifies council's vision for our sporting facilities. I hope that it also identifies commercialisation principles and also highlights how much money we're actually spending on sport. So if this plan blows up in our face and all else fails, we can look at I can look at my community sporting groups in the eye and highlight to them that we have explored the options for a sports fund. We have looked at how much money we actually spend on them. We've outlaid it in a report and we have given them the time and consideration that they have asked for.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. Thank you. Item 12, petitions. Do I have a mover? To Councillor Platten?
Very happy to move.
And the seconder? Councillor Stafford?
Second.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. And no urgent business, confidential items. So I'm asking, can we move into confidence? Councillor Themialotis?
Yes, happy to move this.
Councillor Platten, second. All those in favour? Yes, okay.